Chapter 8:23. The Instant Space Dragon Hall didn't allow alien races to enter. If there was a chance, they could take it. However, if the treasure of the race was taken by others, then the situation would be different. They would be forming huge animosity. No matter how generous the Instant Space Dragon race was, they wouldn't show any mercy. Moreover, 15,000 years later, the methods of the top dragon race were different from 10,000 years ago. During the Cloud Desolate era, the 9 types of true dragons, the 4 dragon palaces were giving to the cultivators of the various worlds and looked down on them. 15,000 years later, they were wary, trying their best to suppress them. Misfortune is a blessing in disguise, Zhong Shou smiled, accepting the gratitude of the 3 of them. If he didn't have the Book of Ian to block at the crucial moment, his life and death would be uncertain. Following this, he casually tossed the Universe Light Hall in front of Li Fengfei. Due to the Taoist faction, I can't return to the Cloud World. Once the news passes, I will have to trouble the 3 of you to bring it back to Gantian Mountain. The 3 of them exclaimed as they looked at Zhong Shou in disbelief. He handed such an important celestial treasure to them just like that? Don't doubt the people you use. I won't say such words to confuse people. This item is useless to you and will cause trouble. I am confident that no matter where you hide, I will be able to find you in the future. All of you should know my methods. Instead, if you bring it back to Gantian Mountain, the 3 of you won't need to take any risks and can comprehend the instant space ability in the Universe Light Hall. Li Fengfei thought about it and it was true. Even if they swallowed this item, they wouldn't get any special benefit. Be it the Lu family or Saint Venerable Longying, they were enough to make one worry. Take this item and join the Taoist faction or other powers. Zhong Shou might not be able to do anything to them, but if he wanted to find trouble with them, no one would be able to stop him. Unless they hid for the rest of their lives, the risk was too huge, and it wasn't worth it. Han Ming's eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "We will definitely not disappoint the monarch. If anything happens to this treasure, we will immediately take action. If anything happens, I will pay with my life." "That's great." Zhong Shou nodded. Then, he wrote 3 more communication talismans in the void and handed them to Li Fengfei. "If you return to the Cloud World, the 3 of you can each take this talisman. Requesting an audience with Common People Palace Lord Shui Lingbo, Wujua Manor Lord Yanfan, and 10,000 Buddha Vast Habitat Elder Ci Fong. You have to remember that the person in front of you must be a bit faster than the other 2. Only if Tsang Xingdao intervened first could the safety of the Universal Light Hall be guaranteed." Although he was cooperating with the Kenzo sect, he trusted their characters. However, he still had to take precautions, even if it was just in case. However, the 3 of them did not know what was going on. Today, whatever Zhong Shou said, they would do as they were told. Even though he had doubts, he could only suppress them for the time being. That Saint Realm spiritual sense was still searching outside. After searching for half a day, perhaps because they were unable to find anything, they had no choice but to give up and retreat. The 4 of them heaved a sigh of relief. However, no one talked about leaving Shuang Ocean. This matter was far from over. Those few instant space dragon race Saint Realm experts definitely wouldn't give up so easily. Who knows, there might be instant space dragon race experts waiting outside Shuang Ocean. Even if it was just one God Realm expert, it was enough to make the 4 of them regret it. Zhong Shou was smiling. Before he left, he used the Book of Ian to wipe away all traces of him. Before this, only the Tsangyan Hall head had appeared in the Instant Space Dragon Hall. Fangjue had schemed against him once, and he had also framed him. As expected, his mood became much better. Actually, he couldn't hide it for too long. However, at that time, the 3 factions shared this item. Even if the Instant Space Dragon race knew about it, there was nothing they could do. At this moment, the dragon race was not as strong as 10,000 years ago. They even needed the Taoist sect to work together and even betray Ao Kuan to be able to live peacefully. From this, one could see the decline of this race. The outside world was already calm, and Zhong Shou finally had some time to check what he had gotten from the so-called treasure trove. When his spiritual sense swept across, Zhong Shou's expression changed. In an instant it became really ugly. There were indeed a lot of things inside. However, it was similar to what he had obtained on the giant mountain. It was either spiritual fruits and herbs or tools that were exclusive to the instant space dragon race. There were also some strange things, but most of them were of no use to him. They were stored in that cave to be replenished. Right, after all, this is just the legacy hall. The dragon race has matured and studied the abilities of their race. Although it is important, it isn't an important place. How could there be so many mind stones left here? Zhong Shou shook his head and mocked himself. However, a few different colored stones appeared in his hand. They were all half the size of a palm. This was the only thing he was confused about. This item looked like a mind stone, crystal clear. However, when he used his spiritual sense to investigate, he didn't sense anything at all. There was also no spiritual energy that seeped out. It was like a normal stone. However, Zhong Shou could feel the shocking spiritual energy within. In the entire treasure trove, there were only 150 of such stones. However, they were placed in the most restricted area of the entire treasure trove. Playing with it in his hand, the doubt in Zhong Shou's eyes grew thicker and thicker. Li Fengfei, who was opposite him, sucked in a cold breath when she saw the situation and exclaimed, "It is actually a low-grade celestial stone?" Zhong Shoxin's head jumped up and he was enlightened. Then, joy appeared in his eyes. However, the mocking expression on his face became thicker. So, it was this item. Zhong Shou was really ignorant and didn't have much knowledge. The crystallization of spiritual energy from heaven and earth was a mind stone. However, at most, it could only reach high-grade Xian. Moreover, unless this item was nurtured in a spiritual vein or a place where the origin spirit was strong, the spirit within the stone would slowly dissipate as time passed. The process was slow, but even if it was high-grade Xian, after 10,000 years, it wouldn't be much stronger than yellow-grade mind stones. As for these celestial stones, they were the product of people with high cultivation, refining and purifying normal mind stones. Inside, there was an exquisite spirit storage formation and also a spirit gathering formation. It was separated from the outside like it was a small heaven and earth. Not only would there be no spiritual energy dissipating, but if it was used up, it could be slowly replenished. The amount of spiritual energy was 10 times that of Xian-grade mind stones. However, these things were already totally extinct in the cloud world. Even if there were, they were in the hands of the few factions and Saint Realm experts. In his last life, it was impossible for him to come into contact with them. Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was what they meant by lose on the swings and gain on the roundabout. Although 150 low-grade celestial stones weren't much, the thousands of high-grade Xian-grade mind stones that they had lost these few days were all made up for. He had underestimated the instant space dragon race. At this moment, why would the top race of the 9 races use mind stones, such an unconventional thing? Luckily, he didn't ask today, otherwise, he would have really embarrassed himself. Chapter 8:24. This is the void in my heart, the manifestation of the Dharma world? Outside the void world, Zhong Shou's expression was solemn as he looked at the tens of thousands of stars in front of him. The black and white holes were hidden and only the stars in the soul ocean were revealed by Zhong Shou. It was bright and eye-catching, but it was different from the true universe star falling technique. The latter referred to the stars in the sky and could borrow their power. However, Zhong Shou didn't know what it was like within his soul ocean. Then, the Dharma that appeared on the outside. It was just like that. It had nothing to do with the stars in the various worlds. However, it was equally bright. Each star was a Tao seed. Although it was derived from space and time, it also contained the 5 elements. However, at this moment, what Zhong Shou paid the most attention to was the 24 instant space dragon pellets that had merged into his Dharma soul. At this moment, 2 months had passed. Zhong Shou rode the royal demon flying shuttle and hid in Shuang Ocean with Li Fengfei and the other 2 for a full 2.5 months. Only then did they run out from Shuang Ocean once more. As expected, the instant space dragon race had totally given up on searching. It was really calm outside. During these 77 days, he spent all of his time on these dragon cores. He even didn't mind using those celestial stones that he didn't get easily to try to use the universe light hall. He sped it up for a month, allowing Li Fengfei and the others to gain many benefits. Luckily, such celestial stones only needed a few bits of source spirit to be able to recover on their own and be recycled. If they were placed in a place like the common people's vast habitat, they would be able to recover in just a month. Not long ago, Zhong Shou had just said goodbye to the 3 of them. Only now did he have the intention to take a look at the instant space star falling technique that he had researched for close to a year to see how effective it was. This great technique was very likely one of his trump cards. Therefore, even in front of the 3 reverends, he didn't reveal a single bit of it. The Taoist faction's heavenly cycle secret star-star falling technique is that each star is a spell. At its peak, tens of millions of stars fell. Not only did it have the strength of 10 million mountains, but it was also equivalent to 10 million spiritual spells that were released at the same time, completely drowning people within. Power was truly terrifying. As for Zhong Shou's instant space starfall art, every star is a type of great Tao. Although I don't know which one of them is better in the future, I still don't know. However, it is beneficial for me to form the Tao word true talisman, going from complex to simple. Looking at the 24 celestial realm dragon pellets which had turned into stars, Zhong Shouxin chanted out, "Attract." Therefore, in an instant, an extremely strong gravitational force was generated from the star, sucking in everything around it. Even those various beasts that flowed through the world river were all terrified as they were forcefully drawn over. The corners of Zhong Shou's lips twitched as he uttered the word reprimand again. As the gravitational force dissipated, another wave of repulsive force was generated from the opposing star. In just an instant, all the items that were sucked over were pushed far away. Attraction and repulsion were great Taos that came from the black and white holes space technique. Actually, the 2 of them came from the same source, a power known as attraction from the future. It was on the same level as space and time. The 24 dragon pellet stars also had a magnetism word which came from the same source. In this era, there were many cultivators who were cultivating. As they came from the same source, Zhong Shou didn't use his spiritual sense to display it. Zhong Shou's spiritual sense flashed once more, causing this star to instantly calm down. Then, he said the word heavy, and another star lit up. Zhong Shou instantly felt his body become 100 times heavier. Even a random action was extremely tough. Compared to the word heavy, it was light. The moment he said this, Zhong Shou's body became as light as a swallow, like a feather about to float and fly. Next is strength. A star lit up once more. This time, it merged into his body. Zhong Shou punched out. That ferocious fist energy instantly crushed and destroyed the entire world river inch by inch. It didn't recover for a long time. Zhong Shou's strength was 38 mountains. Spirit and martial arts merger, using the completed half of the Juntian armor, he had close to 280 mountains of strength and could go up against intermediate celestial realm experts. When this strength word star merged into his body, in a short time, it caused the strength of his 280 Sumer mountains to increase by close to double. Unfortunately, this time only lasted for 3 breaths. 3 breaths later, the power of this star was used up. Zhong Shou also felt that the vast and surging power in his body was disappearing. What a waste! If I had 2 more breaths, along with my spirit realm killing path sword intent, I would be able to fight on the same level as late celestial realm experts. However, if I use it along with my darkness blooming Sirius, it is not bad. 24 celestial realm dragon pellets meant 24 Daos, 24 laws. They were all born from Zhong Shou's Dharma and the 18 talismans. Zhong Shou originally didn't ask for a deep understanding, just to be able to understand a little of it. However, all the Daos were connected to one another. There was a saying in the cultivation world that spread like wildfire. If you understand one law, you will understand all laws. With the same logic, if you understood all laws, naturally you would be able to reach the peak of one law. Due to his vast knowledge, when Zhong Shou comprehended a Tao, he was able to use evidence from the side to compare with one another. It didn't take long for him to be able to grasp the essence of things. When Zhong Shou didn't force himself to be able to fully comprehend, he improved even more quickly. The mysteries here could often be solved elsewhere. If he had problems, he could solve them here. It was also because of this that Zhong Shou felt that his instant space star falling technique was really beneficial to his Tao path. Towards the Tao word that was indiscernible, hidden deep in the clouds and couldn't be grasped, Zhong Shoxin started to slowly become clear. Even the 18 core talismans of the black and white holes also benefited from this and became much more perfect. Especially the former. When Zhong Shou completed the deduction of the guide and rebuke Daos, the aura became more and more majestic, like it was much more real. His entire soul ocean also became exaggerated once more. His cultivation had greatly improved. Every star, every great Tao. They are all like the cycle of heaven star falling technique, not needing any hand seals. With just a thought, it can be instantly cast, enough to catch one off guard. Although I can't borrow the power of the stars in this aspect, it is much better than the secret star falling technique. The heavenly cycle secret starfall art was just a variety of spiritual arts, while his stars were the Tao itself. Naturally, the difference couldn't be measured with logic. However, the name of this instant space star falling technique is a little inappropriate. Oh, I have the lightning blaze 1000 flash ability. This technique can also be called ability. It is called 3000 star falling, taking the meaning of the 3000 Daos. Zhong Shou didn't seek to truly merge with the 3000 Daos. He was already satisfied to be able to use up all 397 dragon pellet. However, how difficult would it be to complete it? Even at this moment, the 24 celestial realm dragon pellets weren't all merged into his soul ocean. If it was completed, he could convert them into illusionary and physical at any moment and merge them into his soul ocean void space. However, at this moment, he only refined a portion of it to be used as an external treasure. When the Dharma appeared, he could use it to cooperate with him to display a portion of the Tao ability. This year of refining was far from enough. Not only did these instant space dragon pellets need to be polished, but Zhong Shou also needed to merge some things in. Only then could these Dharma dragon pellets be fully compatible with these Tao stars. Illusionary and physical could be changed as he wished. With a thought, Zhong Shou caused all the stars to scatter far away. His body flashed and he disappeared from the spot. In the next instant, he appeared at another part of the world river. It was where one of the star dragon pellets was. As expected. As long as my Dharma star is distributed, I can change my body at will. This was another ability that was born out of the 3000 star falling technique. The 24 stars were all crafted from instant space dragon pellet. Their minds were connected, causing Zhong Shou's body to be able to change between these 24 spots. Similarly, he just needed a thought to activate it. He didn't use soul power, spiritual energy, or any spells. With just a thought, he could teleport. If the various abilities before were to attack, then this was to defend. In battle, he could use this method to avoid the enemy's lethal strike. It would cause the enemy to be unable to grasp his true position. The only weakness was that there were too few stars that could be used to teleport. These dragon pellets that couldn't be converted from illusionary to physical were easily destroyed by experts. However, this was only temporary. If he cultivated this technique to the highest level, naturally he could make up for it. Zhong-Shou slashed out once more. One origin sword universe light. The nameless sword flashed and the sword light was 1,000 miles away. It was like the nearby time had lost a few breaths. A 3,000th of an instant ago, Zhong-Shou hadn't pulled out his sword. A 3,000th of an instant later, the sword light was 1,000 miles away. It gave one the illusion that he missed something. Actually, it was 24 stars buffing at the same time. It caused the time of this sword to be accelerated to the extreme, which was why it created such a scene. What a waste! This sword is fast, but it can't break through to the spirit realm. However, in terms of power, it is above the Killing Path sword intent. Although his Killing Path sword intent and the Universe Light sword weren't on the same level. However, the difference in the laws between the two couldn't be calculated with logic. However, it is not bad. This 3,000 star falling can indeed be used to supplement my foundations. Not only is it a protective ability, but it can also help my foundations. It didn't disappoint me, no, it should be a surprise. Zhong-Shou's face was filled with glee. He imagined when he was at the Saint Realm, when he slashed out, 3,000 great path stars would fall, and the black and white holes would follow behind. Thus, his smile became brighter and brighter. Even if they were both at the Saint Realm, he would be able to smash them to pieces. At that time, there would be very few people in the world who could make him worry. Oh right. And this time, he had collected tens of thousands of dragon teeth. Immersed in his thoughts, Zhong-Shou sighed a moment later. Put away all these messy thoughts. How far away were these things? The so-called stars of the Great Tao were only 24, and they were far from complete. At this moment it was best if he didn't think too much and did the things in front of him well. When Taoist spirit masters reach the celestial realm, they need to form their own dharma. From then on, there would be a huge difference in strength. There would be differences in the Dharma Tao. However, they would all rely on their own strength. The higher the Dharma, the higher the risk. 7 out of 10 people would fall at this step. If they were lucky, they would be able to reincarnate. If they were unlucky, their souls would scatter. Buddhists are different. When one is at the initial heaven realm, the Dharma is formed by looking at the true form of the Buddhas. In the future, one's potential would be suppressed, but it would be safer. Using Buddhist power, one's combat strength wouldn't be weak. Once one reaches the celestial realm, one would form the golden body, which is the true image and nascent soul of the Taoist faction. One who forms the golden body can become a Luohan. Keeping his sword, Zhong-Shou was in deep thought. Due to my remnant soul body, the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique was flawed. The path I walked was closer to the Buddhist faction. Using the Vairocana mandala and the Vairocana as references. Imitating the Vairocana to form the black and white Dharma. To step out of the celestial realm, one needs to form the golden body and form the true image and nascent soul. At this step, one needs to choose the true foundation. Luckily, he cultivated the 3,000 star falling technique, which gave him hope. If not, who knows how long he would have to wait. Now, I have only merged 24 instant space dragon pellets, 24 DAOs. Once the number of dragon pellets increases to 72 laws, I will gather the number of Earth Vengeance. Once I complete the illusionary and corporeal transformation, I can take another step and step into the celestial realm. Thinking about it, it wasn't far. He just needed 10 years to grasp the power in his body. He had 20 years to comprehend and polish the dragon pellet. In another 20 years, he would complete the illusionary and corporeal transformation. He needed around 5 years to peacefully use the Book of Ian. Luckily, he was in the outer region and met the instant space dragon hall. If he cultivated in the cloud world, who knows how long it would take for him to improve. Martial path cultivation also needs to be prepared. This time I took many spiritual fruits to strengthen the foundations. I can try to form a true golden pellet in my energy ocean. Hey, I really envy Shui Lingbo. That Taiyuan fairy had the golden pellet of a martial path saint. She carried it with her every day, and this step was much easier for her. It was said that recently she had many fortuitous encounters. Not long later, she would step into celestial realm. In the cloud world, she suppressed herself for a full 10 years. Once the restrictions were removed, she would be able to fly into the sky and step into the cloud. All the stars that were manifested were retracted. The 24 instant space dragon pellets all entered his sleeve. Zhong Shou's body flashed, and he raised up the royal demon god shuttle once more. He headed towards the celestial world. Shi Rulin, Ruoshui, and the 6 spaceships had probably been waiting nearby for several months. They couldn't delay any longer. When they fled, they didn't bother about anything else. The 4 of them worked together and didn't care about where they went. They sped 20 worlds away from Xuansong World, and even further away from the celestial world. At this moment, if they wanted to find a way back, they would have to spend even more time. Zhong Shou finally returned to Celestial 12 days later. Just as he was about to get close to the celestial world, a sense of danger rose up in his heart. The sky burning blood in his body suddenly boiled. Was it the Lu family? Chapter 825. The people from the Lu clan had really come quickly. The sky burning blood in his body slowly boiled. Zhong Shou tried his best to hide and suppress it, but he was unable to stop it. The killing intent and evil intent in the distance, along with the resonance of the bloodline, became thicker and thicker. It was close to physical and stabbed into his heart. Outside of the void, a sharp and cold laugh pierced into his ears. What a coincidence! He is actually here. This is great. It saves us from having to search for him. Zhong Shou frowned, only feeling his ears hurt. He knew that at this moment, he couldn't escape anymore. He stopped suppressing the sky-burning blood, unlocking the 7-cycle Xiantong full restrictions. Then, he saw a giant black net spread out in all directions and cover him. Zhong Shou's eyes changed, his body flashed, turning into a light as he fled into the distance. In an instant, he tore open the heavy space barriers. They were tossing the black net far behind them. In the air, there were 7 more sparks that flashed. They were really quick. In the blink of an eye, they were right in front of him. Zhong Shou looked at them and felt his heart jump. He didn't hesitate to fly backwards. Just as he was 3 breaths away, he saw the flames suddenly explode. Red flames spat out from within, sweeping all the stacked layers of space around. Not far away, a spirit space with weak spiritual energy was shattered and burnt to ashes under the bombardment of the crimson, explosive flames. Sky-burning flame. Zhong Shou's pupils constricted. He also had such an ability, but this was the first time he saw power evolve it to the top. This wasn't a power that a spirit realm or celestial realm cultivator could grasp. It should be a higher-level god realm cultivator who sealed their spiritual energy to craft the fire lightning. He avoided the strike of the sky-burning flame lightning. The black net behind him had already charged over. Zhong Shou had an idea and wanted to fly away once more. However, black threads swept over from all directions. It completely blocked off all paths of escape. It also trapped him, layer upon layer, enveloping him within. You're just a late soul realm cultivator. Why didn't you just surrender when you ran into us? You actually want to escape? Isn't that laughable? That sharp laughter rang out once again. It penetrated the black net and entered Zhong Shou's ears. You must be joking. Even ants craved for life, let alone humans. Moreover, this is the periphery of the cloud world and it is forbidden. It isn't a place for us to fight. How can someone from the cloud world be a match for both of us? Another steady and heavy voice sounded out, and it spoke disapprovingly. Also, from what I saw just now, he did have some ability. It's not something a spirit realm cultivator can do. If it wasn't for little Sister Z throwing out these balls of scarlet tribulation sky burning lightning, your heaven entangling net might not have been able to capture him. His escape technique is indeed extraordinary. This time, the voice came from a woman, and it was extremely cold. To be able to dodge my scarlet tribulation sky burning lightning technique in time, ordinary immortal realm experts are no match for him. Hey! If he doesn't have any ability, he won't be able to fight for the head of our Lu family. Why would Fangjue push this person out to fight with the few young masters? The teen with the sharp voice laughed once more. This Fangjue is really ambitious. He has only been in charge of the Tsangyan Hall for a few years and actually dares to join the battle for the heir position. Who knows if he really wants to repay our cousin, or is he pushing him out to die? I heard that 2 months ago, Third Great Grandmaster was so angry that he tore apart several halls in the palace? There is such a thing. A fourth voice rang out, but it was calmer, however. What does this have to do with you? We just need to settle this matter and be able to return. Today, this person has been captured. Do we still need to head to the Cloud World? After all, country ruler Xuanya told us to investigate what the Zong family father and son did in the Cloud World during these 10 years. In my eyes, it is best if we don't go. The calm middle-aged man opened his mouth once more. Taoist faction, Buddhist faction, and even that Song Xingdao Kenzo sect are all rising stars in this region. Especially that Taoist faction, when they were at their peak, they could be compared to our sky-burning Lu family. This place is also under the jurisdiction of the Tsangyan God Hall. Although Fangjue has been moved away, there are still people in the God Hall that we can use. Anyways, Zong Shou himself is already waiting for us to do something. Capture him, and bring him back to country ruler Xuanya, and we can explain everything. Zong Shou was within the black net, quietly listening to the few of them speak. The doubt in his eyes slowly faded. If one were to say that these people were only here to gather information, it would be barely acceptable. However, if they wanted to capture and kill him, the 4 of them weren't enough. Hearing the words of the 4 people outside, they already treated him as a prisoner, something in their hands. Zong Shou didn't care, carefully using his spiritual sense to sweep around. His brow furrowed. This heaven-entangling net was a little problematic. Who knows what it was made of, but the black threads couldn't be affected at all. When Zong Shou struck it with his sword, it was always a soft ball, unable to damage it at all. It was also really resilient, shrinking bit by bit and suppressing over. If he didn't have a way to break it, sooner or later he would be totally restrained. Problematic. At this moment, the instant space dragon pellet could change between real and illusionary. Dozens of stars were scattered outside, and he could teleport out at any moment. This heaven-entangling net couldn't trap him or wrap around him. If he could use the Book of Ian Extreme Life, he could directly cross space and teleport out. As for the black and white Dharma, if it was slightly stronger, it would either swallow it or burn it. Now, he could only use the stupidest method to first analyze the structure of the formation and then use strength to break it. Just as he was fully focused, he felt that the heaven-entangling net was suddenly burning with flames. It was the same sky-burning flame, but it was no weaker than the red tribulation sky-burning lightning from before. Zong Shou scoffed coldly. The Juntian armor on his body reacted on its own. A layer of energy spread out around his body to block the red flames. However, he still summoned the blue fire Xian turtle to hold up the 2 giant shields. Then, the Xuanwu body protecting energy and layers of Xian ice formed. It blocked the attacks of the sky-burning flame. Zong Shou himself was in between the giant shields, still fully focused on sensing the situation of the heaven-entangling net. It isn't that you can explain it, but that you will be heavily rewarded. The youth called Lu Kong was still laughing, his voice sharp and cold. Capture the main character. I want to see what other tricks that Songyan Palace Lord has up his sleeves. That Xuanya country ruler has conquered dozens of worlds. Although he didn't expand much, he obtained many good things. Let's hope that is the case. Lu Zi said expressionlessly, I am only curious about one thing. Since Fang Jue wants to push this person out, why does he have a reliable guard around him? If he thinks that we won't dare to attack in the land under Tsangyan God Hall, he is too confident. I find it weird too. Maybe Fang Jue doesn't care about this person and is just a smokescreen to confuse us. That is hard to say. The people above will decide on this matter, and it has nothing to do with us. Or maybe, the middle-aged man seemed to have thought about something really funny and burst out laughing. Or maybe he thinks that this Zong Shou has the ability to protect his life. However, no one laughed along with him. Zong Shou could only hear a few cold scoffs. It was obvious that they didn't think much of the middle-aged man's joke and didn't find anything funny about it. Then, the calm teen said, Lu Kong, what do you want? Since you have already captured him, then don't be a busybody. Lu Kong scoffed coldly when he heard that. His tone was extremely cold. It is because this fellow is a direct descendant of my Lu family that I am annoyed with him. There is nothing wrong with using fire to burn him. This person does have some ability. If he dies, then he is unlucky. If he doesn't, then he is lucky. Lumi, I know what I am doing and it has nothing to do with you. The two of them seemed to be talking about the sky-burning flame that was burning within the black net. How does it have nothing to do with us? The middle-aged man's voice turned cold. Lu Kong, I know about you. I know what happened to you and I am not willing to persuade you. However, don't forget that this person is a direct descendant of our Lu family and is also one of the family head's children. If you treat him like this today, then you need to be wary of others treating you like this in the future. Not to mention that Cousin Hanyan's old subordinates are still here. Even if Fang Jue and Leng Li wanted to kill you, country ruler Xuanya might not go all out to protect you. This person's life is in the ancestral hall register. Then, even if he dies, we can't be stained with his blood. What you Lu Kong want to do has nothing to do with us, but please don't drag the three of us down. The auras of the few people outside seemed to be in a stalemate. A moment later, Lu Kong's voice opened once more. It was filled with unwillingness. Forget it. Let's just let him go today. If this fellow falls into the hands of country ruler Xuanya, his outcome won't be much better. A wave of spiritual energy rippled like it was about to retract the sky-burning flame within the net. However, moments later, Lu Kong's voice became weird. Interesting, he is actually able to hold on until now. I thought that in a few breaths I would be able to refine him. However, until now, his aura is still perfectly stable and not damaged at all. This Zong Shou is really interesting. When he said this, he smiled. He seems to be relying on the Xian ice power to block. Natural protector beast? It is rare for the few of you to encounter such an interesting thing. Why don't we see how long he can live in my net? I am guessing 20 breath. I have overestimated him. What do you all think? Whilst he spoke, another wave of soul power was injected in, causing the red flame to burn even more intensely. The other three people outside the net were totally silent. A moment later, the calm middle-aged man's voice rang out once more. Forget it. Let Lu Kong try. We can see the foundations of this Zong Shou and see how his martial path cultivation is. Legend has it that this person is a seven-tailed spiritual fox mixed with the blood of our Lu family sky-burning flame. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be able to cultivate. Lu Zi said expressionlessly, up to you. She didn't care about anything, following which a cold scoff spread out from within the net. Test my foundations? I am afraid that the four of you don't have the ability. A blood-red sword light suddenly pierced out. The 3,000 black threads were instantly broken. Chapter 8:26. Test my foundations? I am afraid the four of you don't have such ability. A blood-red sword light suddenly pierced out. The 3,000 black threads were instantly broken. Lu Kang was first shocked and then he laughed coldly. What an interesting person, even at such a time you still want to break out of the net. When the other middle-aged man saw that, he shook his head. This heaven-entangling net was made from silk produced by a special whale in the Black Ocean in the Lu family sky dome world. When it hunted in the ocean, it was weak and had the ability to recover. It was also crafted by a god realm expert. The sword light was sharp, but in just a moment, the net would recover back to normal. However, in the next moment, the middle-aged man felt a chill down his spine. His heart was filled with fear and his body turned ice-cold. At the start, the blood-red sword light was condensed and didn't look any different from usual. However, where the sword light passed, it followed an extremely mysterious arc and pierced out. The man and the sword were one. All the black threads scattered and broke apart bit by bit. Like they had lost their life force, they all withered and withered. How were there any signs of healing? There was also a thread of killing intent that locked onto Lu Kang. The expressions of the three of them changed. The smile on Lu Kang's face froze on his face. He hurriedly tossed the net to the side and flashed in the air. He caused his body to deviate from where the blood-colored sword was pointing at. However, this killing intent, this extremely condensed sword intent wasn't so easy to dodge. The sword's shadow changed along with his body, like a startled swan piercing out of the black net and striking over. It got close inch by inch, forcing him into a corner inch by inch. The calm teen at the side was the closest. His eyes instinctively constricted as he scoffed coldly. A flame suddenly exploded out. Numerous fire-colored needles swiftly shot over. Remember, Lu Kang, you owe me a favor today. They say that Cloud World cultivators can't be underestimated. When one fights, even if one is an ant, one can't be careless. His voice suddenly stopped. One could see a silver-white glow sliding out from Zhong Shou's sleeves. He flew over at a speed that exceeded the limit of his reaction. The calm young man didn't even have time to react. That silver throwing knife had already struck him between his eyebrows. At the same time, Zhong Shou's cold sneer could be heard from afar. Under my sword, is there any room for you to save anyone? It's better not to owe him this favor. The calm young man's eyes were filled with disbelief. How could this flying dagger be so fast? So strange? It was so strange that there was no way to defend against it. If he knew that this would happen, he wouldn't have acted for Lu Kang and caused trouble for himself. A final thought flashed through his soul remembrance. Following which, the sharp blade energy charged into his brain. His Niwen divine cloud, and even his entire soul was smashed into pieces. He was also unable to know about the matters of the world. The middle-aged man also attacked at the first instant. A flaming long saber chased after Zhong Shou from behind. Originally, he was only shocked by Zhong Shou's swordsmanship, but now he was even more shocked by the death of the calm young man. Lu Yu! A furious roar. Not only did the flaming saber not retreat, but it became even stronger. It brought with it heaven-covering flames as it instantly sped up. It was because of how strong Zhong Shou was, and how deep his strength was, that the three of them were able to block his strength. However, in the next instance, a ball of blue light charged out from the broken net. It was a giant turtle whose body was covered in blue flames, blocking the path of the saber attack behind Zhong Shou. That turtle looked back and blinked. Then, a huge shield smashed down mercilessly behind him. Quang! A loud ring, but the saber attack wasn't able to shatter the giant shield as the middle-aged man expected. Instead, he was blasted away by the boundless force. The saber attack was in a mess and sparks flew. Xuanwu body protecting energy. The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically when he saw the giant tortoise in front of him. The giant turtle in front of him was actually a variant of the Xuanwu, a variant god beast. The power of the Xuanwu could be considered one of the top 3 god beasts. This giant turtle's strength was no weaker than others of the same species. Even if it was a realm lower than him, its strength was far superior. This Zhong Shou actually had such a god beast protecting him? The moment one man and one beast clashed, the outcome of the battle in front of the giant turtle was about to be decided. Zhong Shou merged with his sword, suddenly increasing his speed and avoiding those flame needles. At this moment, the woman beside Lu Zi attacked at the same time. Similar to before, her hands formed a spell. A few sparks shot out, containing the blazing sun lightning explosion. Using a special method, it was as fast as lightning. Learning from Lu Yu's mistake, she had already raised a brocade handkerchief to protect herself. Zhong Shou smiled, the sword light twisting and turning as it deviated slightly. A blood-colored sword light flashed in the air and slashed towards Lu Zi. The sword light flashed, and with extreme speed that caught one off guard, it sliced off Lu Zi's jade-like hands before those few sparks shot out. He also felt a little wary of this technique, known as the Red Tribulation Sky Burning Lightning. Only by using the Book of Ian would he be able to dodge and block it. If not, how would he have fallen into that black net? After suffering once, he definitely wouldn't make the same mistake a second time. He would fall to the same technique. Lu Zi was obviously shocked. A trace of pain and surprise flashed across her frosty face. She didn't hesitate to fly backward. Zhong Shou temporarily didn't have the mood to bother about this woman. The sword light in his hand was deflected once more. The nameless sword also locked onto Lu Kong, who was swiftly fleeing. This person's words were really infuriating, which was why he wanted to kill him first. A red light flashed, but this time no one could block it. In just a 300th of an instant, the two of them and one sword passed through dozens of stacked layers and space walls. Lu Kong finally had nowhere to hide and was unable to dodge. In the end, the red sword shadow was right in front of him. He slashed out with the knife in his hand, but the moment it came into contact, it instantly broke. The energy around his body was sliced apart like it was breaking through dry leaf. Lu Kong's eyes were filled with a crazed expression. How was that possible? Just a late spirit realm, how could he kill him? He was the head of the 4 of them here. The Lu family branch bloodline was one of the few rising stars in 200 years. In just 10 years, he could enter late celestial realm, someone who was half a foot into God realm. How was it possible for him to fall here? To die in the hands of this Lu family bastard? The blood-colored sword didn't show any mercy at all. With a slash, it sliced Lu Kong's head into 2. His head was sent flying, but his eyes were still wide open, filled with disbelief. He suddenly thought about something. His pupils constricted into a needle shape. Sword Intent Spirit Realm. Your killing path, Sword Intent, has actually reached the spirit realm. Before he finished, the blood-colored sword light stirred once more. 1,000 sword shadows shattered the soul of the head. The middle-aged man in the distance was originally hesitating about whether or not to continue fighting. At this moment, when he heard those words, he didn't hesitate at all and flew backwards. Sword Intent Spirit Realm. It was actually Sword Intent Spirit Realm. No wonder this Zhong Shou's sword made him feel so terrified. How could a late Spirit Realm grasp Spirit Realm Sword Intent? Lu Kong's strength was above his, so he definitely wouldn't be wrong. It was just unbelievable. Xuanya country ruler sending him to investigate the situation in the cloud world was a good decision. What was amusing was that the Lu family still thought that this kid was just a bastard, a smokescreen pushed out by Fangzhue. Also, what was going on with those people in charge of monitoring the Zhong father and son? They actually kept saying that this Zhong Shou was normal and couldn't cultivate, that he was a piece of trash. If this Zhong Shou was a piece of trash, then what was he, Lu Hui, worth? At this moment, Lu Hui felt really weird. In his initial impression, this Zhong Shou was just a rabbit with some strength. No matter how strong he was He was just a rabbit. He couldn't pose a threat and couldn't escape from their grasp. However, in just a few breaths, this rabbit turned into a man-eating beast. After the blood-colored sword light killed Lu Kong, it turned around. The sword intent locked onto him. This time, it was Lu Zi who Zhong Shou felt the greatest threat. She and the sword were one, instantly changing. Lu Zi's hands had already recovered. A few sparks appeared in her hands once more. However, this time she didn't dare to use it on Zhong Shou. She tossed aside everything, exploding all the red tribulation sky burning lightning in front of her as she continued to flee into the distance. She couldn't maintain that ice-cold expression anymore, her face turning ashen white. Sword Path Spirit Realm. With her current realm, once she was locked, she would definitely die. She could only go all out to fight for that chance of survival. When Fang Hui saw this, his face was filled with terror. With the blue fire Xian turtle in front of him, he didn't dare to block and couldn't block it. He could only holler, "Zhong Shou, you dare! The few of us are your uncles. What are the consequences of killing the elders of the same race? Do you know who the person behind Zi is? If you dare to kill her today, you will regret it for the rest of your life." Zhong Shou scoffed coldly once more. Same race? In the conversation just now, she didn't treat Zhong Shou as someone of the same race. As for the person behind Lu Zi, he was too lazy to bother about him. He also couldn't think of why he would regret it for the rest of his life. Even if someone wanted to take revenge for her, as long as he had the nameless sword, what did he have to fear? He stopped before the flame-lightning vengeful spirit exploded. Then, just as its strength was slightly reduced, the sword attack exploded out once more as he slashed out. It actually forcefully slashed apart the sky-burning flame and pierced through that layer of cloth. Its body was like a dream as it headed right for Lu Zi. Just as it touched her brow, Zhong Shou's expression changed. He felt a beast-like roar ring out in his ear. The bloodline in his body was boiling. In an instant, everything was clear. Lu Zi's body had a talisman that could sense danger. Moreover, this person's cultivation was not only strong, their bloodline was also really close. As expected, he had one more huge enemy. Zhong Shou's eyes flashed. His sword didn't stop at all as it stabbed into Lu Zi's brow, causing her to lose all signs of life. After killing Lu Zi, he slashed. In just half a breath, Lu Hui's head was tossed into the air. Chapter 8:27. At the same time, who knows how many worlds away from the celestial world, in a fiery hell-like space, an extremely sorrowful and angry howl suddenly resounded through the three heavens. That voice shook and even spread out of this world. Lu Zi. Like a beast in despair, it caused the close to 1,000,000 soldiers who were fighting here to stop in their tracks. They looked back in shock. In his line of sight was a young man sitting on a crimson war chariot. He was handsome and masculine, holding a giant sword in his hand as he sat in the middle of the army. He was the head of the army. His eyes were red, filled with blood veins like blood was about to drip out. Who dares to do that? Who dares to scatter Zi's soul? His spiritual sense spread out, striking out in all directions like he wanted to spread further away, exploding out without any care for the consequences. However, it caused the numerous soldiers here to find it tough to take. They all half knelt on the ground and gritted their teeth. Even the enemies with stone-skinned flames on their bodies were looking over in shock. They didn't understand why the man who led the army and caused heavy losses to their race would suddenly go crazy. However, they were terrified of his strength and didn't dare to attack. Celestial World, Songyan God Hall. It's Fangjue, he really deserves to die. He seemed to have recognized where Lu Zi fell. The teen's face was even more vicious as he instinctively started to vent his anger. Remember, no matter who you are or what your identity is in the Lu family, I, Lu Wushuang, will definitely kill you under my sword. I will make you suffer for the rest of your life. I will wipe out your race and let you taste this heart-tearing pain." After saying this, the figure suddenly rose into the air. With a step, he left this fiery world. However, just as his figure was about to flee into the distance, an incomparably vast power suddenly crossed the boundary and arrived. It locked down his body. A cold and dignified voice suddenly sounded. "Lu Wushuang, the battle here hasn't ended. Where are you going? Are you going to leave your post? Zi has already died." Lu Wushuang did not struggle and allowed the power to suppress his body. He only glared at the void. "I remember you once said that you would definitely take good care of her. Lu Zi? Was it the descendant of the 14th branch? I remember that not long ago I sent her to investigate the cloud world. He really shouldn't. That Fangjue doesn't have the guts." The dignified voice was filled with doubt, but then it turned serious again. "Is it worth it for a girl from a side branch of the Lu clan? Ignore the war in the blood flame world? So what? Zi is worth this much from me." Lu Wushuang snorted coldly and said, "In my eyes, even the entire Lu family is not as important as her." "You brat, you're really incurable." That dignified voice seemed to be extremely angry. After that, there was a period of silence as if he was pondering. After a while, he spoke again. "I will send people to investigate this matter carefully. You must take revenge with your own hands. We will not stop you. But before that, they had to end the war in the blood flame world, and the casualties couldn't exceed 100,000. If not, with me stopping you, you can forget about leaving this place for the rest of your life." When his voice fell, the huge, strange force also dissipated at the same time. Lu Wushuang stood in the air. His face alternated between green and white. In the end, he stomped his feet, filled with unwillingness as he entered the blood flame world once more. This time, his killing intent was extremely sharp as he suppressed the million Lu family soldiers once more. Even if he was tens of thousands of worlds away, Zhongshou also felt a chill down his spine. The evil killing intent that seeped out from his bloodline didn't dissipate, causing his hair to stand on end. His heart surged, that sense of danger was getting closer and closer. This person is so strong. At least stronger than him now. It made one's heart tremble. He only had the same feeling once before when he challenged the Taoist faction alone. He didn't care about success or failure. He only felt it when his life and death were uncertain. At that time, he faced thousands of Taoist faction sects as well as numerous spirit realm cultivators in the vast habitat. However, at this moment, just one person gave him such a sense of danger. As expected, I still have to raise my combat strength first. I need to perfect the 3,000 star falling technique. It would be best if I could merge 48 instant space dragon pellets within a few months to transform from illusionary to real and one with my soul. Zhongshou thought about it as he casually reached out and grabbed all the items that the four of them carried with them. Especially the heaven entangling net and the red tribulation sky burning lightning. Zhongshou played with them. The more he looked at them, the more magical he found them. "This net is really weird. Who knows what material it is made of? It is tough to be hurt by knives and swords, it can't be affected by strength, and it also has the ability to heal itself. It should be a magical treasure crafted by a god realm blacksmith, between grade 7 and grade 8. Power is also far above people of the same grade. Besides that, this crimson tribulation skyblaze lightning was obviously refined with the blood essence of a god as its core, and its might was practically equivalent to 30% of the strength of a god. This Lu family isn't just rich and overbearing. Before this, when he saw Fangjue and the others, he noticed. The artifacts and combat strength of this group of people were all really extraordinary. Actually, not only the heaven entangling net and the red tribulation sky burning lightning, but even those red flame flying needles and flame blades weren't ordinary treasures. Power was really good. They were all intermediate celestial realm, but the celestial realm experts that Yelu Hongji gathered weren't his match. However, these 4 people made him spend so much effort and he pretty much used all his trump cards. He even needed the help of the blue fire Xian turtle to be able to take them down. Unfortunately, this net is too badly damaged. Without the corresponding materials, it is most probably unable to be repaired. As for this red tribulation sky burning lightning, without a special method to activate it, it is just trash. If I face that God realm cultivator himself, it is like a ticking time bomb. It is best if I don't use it. He thought about it. It seems like he had to be careful in the future. Not only were there many weird people in the outer region, but there were also many weird methods that were tough to defend against. Just like today, he nearly fell into a dead end. Thinking about himself, if he didn't have the Book of Ian Extreme Life, if the 4 of them fell into the net, they would go all out and try to kill him. Even if he had half of the Jun Tian armor and the blue fire Xian turtle protecting him, he would still be severely injured. He would still be heavily injured. Thinking about what happened today, he felt a chill run down his spine. What would he do if he were to face someone even stronger? It seems like in the future, not only did he have to be really careful, but he also had to have more methods to defend himself. Thinking about it, he could only rely on this sword technique and this flying knife. As for spells, they weren't enough. The abilities that he could use were just too few. The 4 members of the Lu clan had a lot of belongings and spirit stones with them. Although it was far from the Qin Emperor's subtomb and the treasury in the first Dragon Hall, it was still a lot. Their gains were huge. Zhong Shou didn't care much about these low and middle Xian grade mind stones. However, he still needed some mind stones to set up formations or use for other purposes. Moreover, not long later, he would have to spend a huge sum. These gains were the only thing that he was happy about. He used the power of the Book of Ian to wipe out all traces of this place. Zhong Shou continued his journey. As expected, they are already here. Moreover, it has been a long time. During these few months, the 2 girls must have been really worried. His spiritual sense could clearly sense the spaceship fleet that was parked not far away from Tianfeng World. They were hiding in a really secluded place and were really careful. This was because Zhang Xingdao had a special technique that Zhong Shou could sense. However, at this moment, Zhong Shou didn't head over to meet up with the fleet right away. Instead, he hurriedly entered the Heaven Settlement world and charged towards the Wenqi Pavilion with great familiarity. After leaving for several months, this newly opened artifact pavilion still hadn't opened up. As for Landlord Chen, he was as leisurely as before. He was drinking tea alone in the hall of the pavilion. Looking at Zhong Shou's arrival, he instinctively frowned and then his eyes turned serious. What thick, vengeful energy! Not long ago you killed someone? Zhong Shou smiled when he heard that. That was indeed the case. 4 people at once. Moreover, you got into huge trouble. The person who placed this restriction on your body was at least peak celestial realm. If your bloodline is connected, it won't be easy to remove it. Hearing those words, Zhong Shou was slightly shocked. He raised his eyes and looked opposite him in shock. He could see through that? That was indeed the case. When he killed Lu Zi, a strange power that was close to a secret curse had invaded his body. This curse could protect Lu Zi's body. If Lu Zi died, it could also be used to chase after the culprit. If it was a normal curse, Zhong Shou could solve it himself. He wasn't good at spells, but his understanding of the Tao was no weaker than any celestial realm cultivator. With some slight research, he would be able to find a way. However, the problem was that the 2 of them were connected by bloodline and were deeply entangled with one another. It was tough to solve. Does Landlord Chen have a way to solve it? He originally came for that. However, the person opposite him was able to see through his predicament right away. Or maybe he had the ability to solve his problem. The Lu family Xianyang soul-locking curse. Unless you don't have the Liu family sky burning blood in your body, you can forget about solving it. As he said that, the middle-aged man looked over with a weird expression. I didn't expect that apart from the cloud world, you also have the Liu family background. Your bloodline is really pure. You should be one of the Liu family young masters, right? Zhong Shou was instantly disappointed. Then, he smiled bitterly. This landlord Chen's eyes were really sharp. As for the title of Liu family young master, he didn't agree and wasn't willing to admit it. However, in the eyes of others, that was how they saw him. That landlord Chen didn't want to dig deeper. In the recent few thousand years, the Liu family had many internal conflicts. Even the current family head was unable to suppress them. A direct bloodline descendant of the Liu family had fallen to such a state, to Tianfeng world, a place that was publicly known as far away. One could see his predicament. There was no need to dig deeper into the reason within. After taking in a deep breath, he opened his mouth. Although I can't solve this curse, I have a talisman that can help you solve this problem. After he said that, as expected, a golden talisman was tossed over. To be continued. Chapter 828. Although I can't solve this curse, I have a talisman that can help you solve this problem. After he said that, Landlord Chen tossed a golden talisman over. Zhong Shou took the talisman and his eyes lit up. When this item entered his hand, he didn't even need to activate it and the weird power within his bloodline was suppressed. However, he could still feel that the spiritual energy within the talisman was slowly being used up. He couldn't see what kind of talisman it was. He could only deduce its background from the spiritual patterns within. It should have come from the cloud desolate era ancient style. He couldn't help but look towards the middle-aged man surnamed Chen in anticipation. This talisman should be able to help you suppress this curse for 3 months. After that, you can only pray for your own good fortune. Thank you for 10 high-grade mind stones. Zhong Shou didn't have any objections to the price, his eyes shining brightly. Landlord Chen shook his head and laughed. I obtained this talisman by chance, and it was passed down from ancient times. I don't know how to craft it and only have one. If you want more, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. Zhong Shou's face fell, following which he didn't care anymore. He actually didn't think about escaping from this chase. To be able to delay this person's revenge by a few months was already enough for him. He ran over here for another matter. Let's forget about this matter. Zhong Shou came today for another matter. Can landlord design a sword formation for me? Sword formation? Landlord Chen's brows rose up in shock. I do have a few sets of sword formations here. I am confident that power is not bad. Halfway through his words, he came back to his senses. Does esteemed guest want to craft your own sword to merge with the soul artifact? This business can be done. What requests do you have? The moment these words were said, Zhong Shou was in a tough spot. There were too many requests and it involved too much, so it wasn't easy for him to elaborate. After hesitating slightly, he asked, Does landlord know about the sex cycle of heaven star falling technique? How would I not know about the Taoist technique? Landlord Chen smiled, the weird look in his eyes getting thicker. What does this have to do with the sword formation that you want to craft? I also have a divine ability called the 3000 Starfall, also known as the instant starfall technique. In the Taoism cosmic cycle secret star falling art, every single star was an amalgamation of spells. At his peak, 100,000 stars fell. He was invincible, and holy venerables avoided him. Each and every one of those stars is a great Tao. As Zhong Shou spoke, he saw the pupils of the middle-aged man in front of him shrink. Zhong Shou smiled and said, Naturally, this technique is still in its infancy. I need a sword formation that is compatible with this divine ability. I also need materials related to the laws of time and space to practice the sword. I need a total of 10,800 swords. There are at least 10 immortal grade swords. There were a total of 10 Saint Stage true dragon fangs in his storage. It was more than enough to refine an immortal sword. Naturally, it wasn't possible for power to reach the level of the god-refined sword. It was already not bad if he had even 1/100th of it. Based on what Wei Su said, those 7 swords were all quasi-god artifacts. The god-refined sword was a little different. It was said that it had the chance to improve itself and become a god artifact. Thinking about it, Zhong Shou took out his nameless sword. It is best if I can use this sword as the core to build a sword formation. Landlord Chen didn't take it. Instead, he said helplessly, 10,800 swords, 10 celestial swords. Esteemed guest, you really think too highly of me. How could a sword formation of this scale possibly be deduced by me? Unless I am a Saint Realm expert who has studied formations for many years, there might be a chance. When Zhong Shou heard this, he didn't have a weird expression on his face and didn't feel that it was a pity. He had only come here to give it a try. Thinking about it, asking Landlord Chen to deduce this formation on his behalf was indeed a little too much. Since that was the case, he could only wait for Longing to come out of seclusion and let his master, who was only good at the sword path, help out once. However, I am extremely impressed that our esteemed guest has such great ambitions. 3,000 stars, 10,800 swords, how domineering! I am also more and more curious about your background. I am Shen Yuexian, esteemed guest can call me by my name in the future. Chen Yuexian furrowed his brows and sank into deep thought. A moment later, he said, esteemed guest, please wait a moment. He returned to the inner room and took out an item. Forgive me for being unable to craft such a huge sword formation. Forcefully deducing it will use up a lot of energy. Although I have a lot of time left, I can't waste it on this. The moment he said this, Zhong Shou's face turned red. He wasn't willing to use up what little lifespan he had, which was why he chose to hire someone else to do it. Only to hear Shen Yuexian smile. What a coincidence! 1,000 years ago, I obtained the blueprint of an ancient sword formation by chance. It was passed down by artifact cultivators in the ancient era of this region 40,000 years ago. I heard that it was really amazing and was known as the 10 Extreme Imperial Dao Destruction Sword Formation. It might be suitable for esteemed guest. Ancient artifact cultivator? Zhong Shou's brow rose up. He had heard of this term before. When artifact cultivators were rampant, the cloud world hadn't even appeared. They walked the path of man and artifact merging into one. Their combat strength was usually really strong. The sword cultivators and Kenzo sect of the cloud world, even Longing, all obtained some of their legacies. However, this method was a little biased towards the outer path. Saint Realm was attainable, but it was tough to form the Tao. As time went on, it slowly declined. However, 40,000 years ago, those artifact cultivators had unparalleled strength. Even until now, it was still something people talked about. What was this 10 Extreme Imperial Dao Destruction Sword Formation like? Picking up the blueprint, Zhong Shou was shocked. Who knows what this paper was made of? The material was actually just a little weaker than the Book of Ian Extreme Life. It was just a thin piece of paper, but it was so heavy that he nearly couldn't take it. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that the Tao contained within the blueprint exceeded the limits of his soul. Holding it in his hand, his soul ocean shook and his soul power surged. Taking a closer look, he immediately felt threads of incomparably sharp sword energy charging into his soul. It was like it really existed. The aura was terrifying and extremely sharp. Zhong Shou's forehead was instantly covered in cold sweat. However, he felt more and more that this 10 Extreme Imperial Dao Destruction Sword Formation wasn't ordinary. When I first came into contact with it, I was like you. However, it was even more dangerous and my soul nearly shattered. Legend had it that the person who cultivated this sword formation wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting against several End Realm experts during the ancient era. He stood on the same level as Saint Venerables. Unfortunately, no matter how strong he couldn't form the Tao and turned into a pile of bones. Xin Yuexian seemed to have seen through Zhong Shou's situation and took the diagram back, causing Zhong Shou to relax. This formation is similar to your 3000 star falling technique. It doesn't have any special requirements for the material. Naturally, the sword's quality restrictions will also affect the sword power ability of the formation. It also doesn't limit the number, at least 10 will do and at most 10,000 will do. I wanted to craft this myself, but unfortunately, it isn't 40,000 years ago and there aren't so many treasures to be found. I am also alone and can't compare to those famous sects and races. In the end, I could only give up. Is this formation to your liking? Zhong Shou blinked, his clear eyes shining like stars. His face was filled with a pleading expression. This set of sword formation was simply too suitable for him. Although he felt a little dizzy looking at it, it would be good for him to look at it in the future. However, he felt really nervous. If he wanted to obtain this item, he would have to pay a huge price and pay a huge price. Xin Yuexian looked at his expression and knew that he had asked for nothing. He shook his head and laughed, taking out dozens of diagrams and passing them to Zhong Shou. Before I gave up, I had spent a lot of time studying this sword formation. As this formation was too complicated, after all, it wasn't an artifact cultivator lineage. Thus, I tried to simplify it so that I could learn it. However, when I deduced it, I realized that I was still unable to complete it. If you are interested, you can start from this simplified formation. In the future, if you have the ability, you can complete the true 10 extreme imperial Tao. When he said this, he suddenly paused. Xin Yuexian's expression suddenly turned solemn and serious. However, I won't take money for this formation and I'm not willing to exchange items. If you want to take it, you have to make a promise. When you have the ability, you have to help me do something. Zhong Shou was stunned and looked over with a weird expression. He wasn't surprised at all when he learned that it was free. With this person's ability, if he couldn't do it, then it wouldn't be a normal problem. Compared to this promise, he was more willing to use those celestial stones to solve it. However, speaking of which, with this person's ability, to be an artifact master in such a remote place, he definitely had his own story. In the end, when he left Tianfang World, Zhong Shou still agreed. The temptation of this sword formation was something that he couldn't reject. He knew that it was a huge problem and most probably had a lot of dangers. However, he still swore to accept it. Only because he knew that he had missed out on this day. He didn't know when he would be able to find a sword formation that was so suitable for him and was also so vast with power. However, before he left, Xin Yuexian's words made him alert. Although this sword formation is huge with power, it also consumes a lot of mental energy. In the past, when I was young, I wasted at least 300 years for this formation. Till now I still regret it. One must know that this sword artifact is an external item and one can't be too obsessed with its power. One also can't immerse oneself in it too deeply. Cultivators like us cultivate for tens of thousands of years. In the end, don't we still want to reach the peak of the Tao and live forever? This is the true right path. Thinking about that senior from 40,000 years ago, how sad and pitiful. These words were all sincere and heartfelt. Zhong Shou was also deeply moved. The right path? How would I, Zhong Shou, not know that? Outside Tianfang World, Zhong Shou shook his head and smiled. At this time, the Taoist faction was still eyeing him aggressively and definitely wouldn't give up so easily. Before this big problem could be completely solved, the pressure from the Lu family came one after another. Killing that Lu Zi also made an enemy who had the same bloodline as him. If he didn't prepare some abilities to defend himself, how could he be at ease? However, if he wasn't prepared to go from complicated to simple, He really wouldn't dare to take over this 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation. Chapter 830. Riding the Royal Demon Shuttle, it only took an hour to travel from Tianfeng World to where the fleet was hiding. The moment Zhong Shou got close, he could sense the surging spiritual energy in that direction. His brows instinctively rose up, shock flashing in his eyes. It seems like they are fighting and the opponent isn't weak. Looking at the rise and fall of the spiritual wave, the side of the battle was at least celestial realm. He couldn't help but frown. The strongest combat strength of the fleet was only Ruoshui and Shi Ruolin. Before he left, the former had used the help of the Jade Xian clear purple pill and showed signs of breaking through to spirit realm. 20% of spirit and martial arts merger was enough to sweep people of the same grade. The 300,000 soldiers in the fleet were all elites chosen from the 10 fighting Gans. However, the problem was that Ruoshui wasn't good at army path killing techniques and couldn't command the strength of 10,000 troops. As for Shi Ruolin, she was still young after all. He didn't dare to imagine the tragic state of the fleet over there. Zhong Shoxin panicked, not caring about his spiritual energy as he increased his speed. He also found it weird that the place he chose was really secluded. He read Song Shengdao's book collection and coincidentally learned about it. It was the best place to hide troops and shouldn't have celestial realm beasts passing through. What kind of unforeseen event happened? In a few breaths they flew over, following which Zhong Shou looked forward in shock. The place of the intense battle wasn't where the people of the fleet were. Instead, it was nearby in a world river. The 6 spaceships were engaged in a fierce battle with a giant beast whose body and tail were thousands of meters long. It was like a golden flame lion, its body covered in purple gold scales. Not only was its body huge, but it was also light and nimble. It galloped in the void, roaring out furiously and shaking the void. However, although this beast looked majestic, its eyes showed signs of exhaustion. Those 6 spaceships weren't any weaker than it. They surrounded it and attacked together. When the Flame Lion advanced, the spaceships would retreat. When the Flame Lion retreated, the spaceships would entangle with it, maintaining a sufficient distance. This caused him to be completely unable to free himself, causing him to exhaust bit by bit. Occasionally they would shoot out energy-destroying crossbows with the buffs of the Spirit Masters on the ship. Although they couldn't heavily injure the celestial-grade golden-scaled Fire Lion, they could at least make it worry a little. They covered the sky and covered the earth. Their numbers were enormous, and they attacked with extreme speed, making it impossible for him to dodge. Those tens of grade 9 giant crossbows were buffed by the formation. It was even able to forcefully pierce through those thick golden scales. There also seemed to be spirit realm experts on each of the 6 ships to defend against the Flame Lion's divine ability and magic power. Zhong Shou was stunned for a moment, then he stood aside and watched quietly. In just a short moment, the golden scale Flame Lion's body was covered with countless wounds. As he flew through the void, he was no longer as agile as before. Zhong Shou looked into the distance and noticed that the 6 ships were advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. He had predicted almost every move and every possibility of the Fire Lion. Even though the golden-scaled Flame Lion was weak, he didn't dare to be careless. He carefully chased to slowly wear down its strength. 6 spaceships being controlled like an arm, not bad. Is it Ruolin? No wonder this little brat was able to win against the Night Demons and the Great U Navy. Is this the skill of an unparalleled famous general? As expected from her name. If there wasn't Zhong Shou, Shi Ruolin would have helped her brother out, using a few broken ships to attack all around to steal grain for the winter. However, she was invincible and couldn't be stopped. Under the cloud ocean, she had established the foundations of an emperor dynasty. Today, she was leading these 6 spaceships to try to kill this celestial realm beast. However, these energy-destroying crossbows are pretty much a bottomless pit, using up huge amounts of resources. Who knows where she got so many grade 9 beast crystals from these few days? Naturally, if they could kill this flame lion giant beast, then everything could be earned back. On the body of this celestial realm beast, even if it was just a scale, its value was far from what a grade 9 beast could compare to. Just as his thoughts were running wild, a giant ship appeared. Who knows if it was too anxious, but it got a little closer. A bright glow flashed in the eyes of that giant lion. Energy exploded out from its body as it sped up and pounced towards the ship. Before his body even arrived, the scarlet flames had already swept over. That sharp beast claw also smashed through the air and slashed over. Zhong Shou frowned slightly, raising the nameless sword by his side, and was prepared to attack. In his heart, he didn't understand why Rulin would make such a mistake. In the next instance, he saw that on the ship, hundreds of spiritual talismans were shot out, blocking the flame power and also helping to push forward. It caused the speed of the giant ship to increase by 3 times. It avoided the giant claw that ripped through the air by a millimeter. Hundreds and thousands of energy-extinguishing crossbows blasted over in unison from all directions. That flame lion was caught off guard and couldn't dodge at all. After it cried out, numerous bloody holes appeared all over its body. So it was a trap to beat them at their own game? Interesting. Samuraim's eyes flashed and he smiled as he kept the nameless sword and continued to look on. However, what happened next was really calm and peaceful, so calm that it was a little boring. However, due to this calmness, Zhong Shou could feel that it wasn't normal. It was like each step of the 6 spaceships was carefully calculated. He eliminated all the possibilities of accident. They went step by step, not rushing at all. The process was really smooth and there was no fire or smoke at all. 6 ships and 1 beast fought intensely for half a day. In the end, they confirmed that the fire lion was indeed exhausted. Only then did they toss out a large net to lock up the giant beast. Then, hundreds of talismans similar to the energy-destroying spirit upheaval talisman were shot out. This was to prevent the flame Qilin giant beast from exploding its beast pellet in despair. Another 4 hours passed until the giant beast stopped making a sound. Zhong Shou's body turned into a streak of light and charged into one of the giant ships. This ship was his flagship and was also called Gantian Mountain. It was made from the giant piece of wood he got from Prince Jiamingluo's hands. It was used as the dragon bone and was crafted by Kongqi Sec. Not only was it the strongest out of the 6 spaceships, but its outer shell was also the sturdiest. After entering the ship, only when his body reached the small palace that was specially built for him did people notice. Then, joy appeared on the faces of all the guards. As expected, Sher Rulin was here, sitting beside his throne, giving out orders to control the 6 spaceships. At this moment, within the Gantian ship, there were cheers all around. Not only did they not lose a single person from this hunt, but they also gained a lot. A celestial-grade golden-scale fire lion, just 1 pellet was enough to cover their losses. Moreover, it was more than enough. Not to mention the other parts of the fire lion which were all rare treasures. The tens of thousands of scales on its body, if they were used sparingly, they could craft thousands of grade 9 magical treasures. At the start, Rulin was focused on observing the outside of the ship. Ruoshui was holding her chin with her hand. Her eyes were lazy as she looked on with interest at what Sher Rulin was doing. A moment later, they finally felt that the atmosphere wasn't right and raised their head. However, they noticed that Zhong Shou was already in front of them. "Brother Shou, Senior Master." Sher Rulin was first delighted, and then she seemed to have thought about something, grumbling, "Senior Master, you should have arrived long ago, right? Why did you stay outside to watch the show?" Zhong Shou's face turned bitter. It wasn't good to have a high seniority, he was being called old for no reason. Thus, he patted Sher Rulin's head, "There are no outsiders here. You are my sister, so just call me brother or royal brother. You must know that Art Song Xingdao doesn't care much about seniority. We just need to respect the old and love the young. If Zhao Yinran were here, she would definitely break out in curses and expose Zhong Shou's hypocrisy. Who was it that forced him to call him great 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 great, not even one word less? Shi Rulin, on the other hand, was extremely happy. She enjoyed Zhong Shou's intimate caresses. It squinted its eyes and let out a satisfied murmur, which sounded like a cat meowing. Zhong Shou, on the other hand, suddenly felt a burst of fear and trepidation. Why did he feel as if his body was on fire? His body was on fire, and his bestial desires were blazing. Could it be that he was really a beast? At this moment, Shi Rulin had grown a little taller. As expected from the snow lion of the palm, she was not much different from a 12-year-old girl. Ruoshui didn't say anything, only using her pure and clear eyes to look at Zhong Shou. She seemed to be asking Zhong Shou how he had been in the past few months. Did he face any danger? It wasn't until Zhong Shou's body stiffened up that a weird expression appeared in her eyes, filled with disdain. The current her wasn't like a few years ago when she didn't dare to be interested in male and female matters and was ignorant. Zhong Shou only felt his face burning up, awkwardly retracting his hand. Then, he coughed dryly and used his ability to shift the focus. Speaking of which, it is weird. I don't remember Argantian Mountain having so many beast crystals stored up. What is going on with this golden scale fire lion? Changing the topic to shift the attention of the people around. Zhong Shou was familiar with this technique and had tried it many times. What he asked was something he was curious about. A portion of these beast crystals came from our Kenzo sect, Buddhist faction, and common people's faction. A portion came from Miss Rulin, who led the fleet and hunted beasts. At the start, Miss Rulin said that it was better to be prepared. Today it really came into use. The voice was really calm and heavy, but also filled with sharpness. Zhong Shou turned around in shock, following which his eyes were filled with a weird expression. The person in front of him was the one who was once on the same level as him. Even Tai Chi, whose aura nearly suppressed the other 5 of the 6 pinnacle sword. He remembered that when he first met him, he felt that this person looked reserved but was actually really arrogant. He was humble and polite but was really arrogant. Looking at this person now, it was like he was a totally different person. Calm and humble, gentle like jade, giving one a good impression of him. Speaking of which, this time when he was conquering the outer region, the Kenzo sect and Buddhist faction did indeed participate. Amongst which, the former was the most important. So this time the leader of the Kenzo sect was this Tai Chi? Zhong Shoxin was filled with admiration for the 10,000 sword vast habitat mountain head Lingchen's teaching methods. On the other hand, he was curious why the Kenzo sect would send this person out. Chapter 831. Zhong Shou had guessed that the person following the Kenzo sect was Su Chun. He also thought about whether or not he would summon Lei Dong back from the outer region. Or maybe it would be the other Kenzo sect elders. However, he didn't expect that it would be this Tai Chi, my sword sect attache's great importance to the expansion of the outer territory this time. Senior brother Ruotao has already been confirmed by my Kenzo sect as the next outer sword vast habitat mountain head, so it isn't convenient for him to come over. This time I can only let my junior brother do it for me." Tai Chi knew that Zhong Shou would have such doubts, as he said expressionlessly. The two things that he mentioned were that the Kenzo sect placed a lot of importance on. Tai Chi's position in the Kenzo sect was still really high, and he still expressed that he placed a lot of importance on this matter. However, he didn't have any other emotions and just calmly explained. "As for this golden scale fire lion, we bumped into it 2 months ago. We went through so much to escape to this place. However, this golden scale fire lion chased us relentlessly and wanted to break through our hiding place. Thus, a day ago, Rulin set up a trap. First, we heavily injured this beast, and then after half a day we killed it here." When Zhong Shou heard this, he instantly felt guilty. 2 months ago should have been when he was hiding from the instant space dragon race in Shuang Ocean. Luckily, nothing happened, otherwise, he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. He also felt that he couldn't split his attention. With his strength alone, it was getting harder and harder to take care of everything. Luckily, Shi Rulin survived. He caressed Shi Rulin's head. This little brat didn't have any intention of using these achievements to show off in front of Zhong Shou. However, she really liked Zhong Shou's intimate actions. Outside of the hall, a gentle old voice spread out, "Indeed, Miss Rulin can command the warships like her own arms. Be it planning before the battle or commanding before the battle, it all makes one exclaim and is really exquisite. I have never seen such a talent in my life. Ruler has a good eye for people. This trip to the outer region has given me a lot of confidence." Zhong Shou looked over, only to see that the person who came was 10,000 Buddha vast habitats, Zifeng. He couldn't help but think to himself that Li Fengfei and the other two were probably going to miss out on one place. Looking away, as expected, Zhong Shou saw Jingyin from afar. Naturally, Zhao Yanran and Xian Yunlan followed behind. These two people were people that the common people path had chosen to travel with them. This was why Zhong Shou wasn't surprised. In the next instance, Zifeng spoke with a complicated expression. "A few days ago, I received news from the cloud world. Junshang, you've really brought back something amazing this time. You've really put me in a difficult spot. I am afraid that once I get on Ruler's boat, it will be tough for me to get off." When Zhong Shou heard this, he instantly knew that Li Fengfei and the other two had returned to the cloud world. That Shuang Ocean was originally really close to the cloud world. He had spent some time on the journey, and he had received guidance from Shun Yuexian in the Tianfang world. He had also spent some time to grasp the basics of the sword formation. His whereabouts were uncertain, and he wasn't able to receive news from the cloud world. On the contrary, Zifeng found out ahead of time. At this moment, he smiled without caring at all. "If the Buddhist faction isn't willing, you don't have to participate. I won't force you, I just hope that you don't leak the news. Ruler is joking. We really have no choice but to participate in this matter." Zifeng broke into a laugh and shook his head. While he spoke, his expression was really weird. "If it is just to speed up time, it is okay if it has a portion of the mysteries of the instant space race. However, that item has the ability to push back the tribulation. Even within our Buddhist faction, we rarely have such treasures. Ruler's conditions are so good, if we reject, then we really don't know what is good for us. I think the Kenzo sect Tsang Xingdao is the same? Ruler, don't worry, this treasure concerns the rise and fall of your sect. The Buddhist faction won't leak a single word." At the start, Zhong Shou didn't care, but when he heard the second sentence, his heart sank. Push back the tribulation? He didn't know that the Universe Light Hall had such an expert. Instantly, his heart felt pained. He really made a loss in this deal. If he knew that this would happen, he would have asked for more benefits. At this moment, the dust had settled and what was done was done. It was too late for him to regret. He couldn't help but smile with an ugly expression. Is that so? That is for the best. Tai Chi didn't bother about his sad mood, opening his mouth once more and directly asking, "At this moment, everyone is here and everything is prepared. Where is ruler prepared to start? There are 100,000 worlds in this region. Apart from those desolate worlds that don't have much production, most of them have owners. It is extremely difficult for us to find an ownerless land. This time, be it ruler or our three factions, we can only succeed and can't fail. Jun Shang, please be careful." Zhong Shou took in a deep breath, his face turning cold. Although Tai Chi's words were a little unpleasant and his tone was a little cold, the logic wasn't wrong. However, the logic was not wrong. This time, they could only win and could not afford to lose. Actually, in his memory, the best outer region world was the small world that Shuriwa occupied at the start. Not only was its production dozens of times better than Tianfang world. Within this world, there wasn't much resistance. This place had probably fallen into the hands of Shuriwa. A few months ago, when he fought with Shuriwa, he knew how strong the country was. However, at that time, he was at his weakest and was unable to stop it. Apart from this place, there weren't many worlds around the cloud world that could be opened up. They either had owners and were hard to shake, or they had to pay a huge price, or they were just barren. Zhong Shou remembered one place that produced a lot of resources. It was a medium-sized world, and the amount of various mines there was pretty much 10 times that of the entire cloud world before the spiritual wave. Although the native races within weren't wiped out. However, the experts of the inner realm were all swept clean. However, at this moment there were many powers that were fighting for it. To take it down, they would have to go through tens and even hundreds of battles. However, this was the only world that Zhong Shou could think of that could be used as a place to fight. There were no shortcuts, so he could only cut a path out of these thorns. After using half a day, Zhong Shou made Tai Chi and Zifang leave in satisfaction. If it was just him alone, he could decide everything himself. Whatever Zhong Shou said, it was what it was. Within Deqian, they worshipped him and no one would object. However, since the Kenzo sect and the Buddhist faction only joined in, then the nature was different. Zhong Shou saw these few sides as his shareholders. When they had doubts about his strategy, naturally, he had to spend effort to explain. Thus, he also knew that the Kenzo sect had invested a lot this time. 3,000 swordsmen, 300 grade 7 and 3 spirit realm. The Buddhist faction wasn't weak at all. Similarly, they had 3 spirit realm monks and 4,000 Buddhist sect disciples. Songxing Dao had 4,000. 4 spirit realm, and there were actually 3 divisions of 450 common people, mysterious dragon warriors. If they could achieve something, they could invest more. Based on what Zhao Yanran said, this was because of him. The Taoist faction was heavily injured, and the pressure on the 3 factions was lifted. Naturally, they all raised the standards and strength of their expedition to the outer region. Firstly, it was to train their disciples. Secondly, it was because of Zhong Shou's tribulation battle a few months ago. Long Ying becoming a saint gave them some confidence. The cloud world rose up too late. Although they had several end realm experts, they weren't strong enough in the outer region. The Lords of Realms often had complicated relationships, and their backgrounds were often deep. For example, the Liu family. Apart from the 800 worlds, they had 3,000 worlds under them. Many end realm experts were wary of the expansion of the cloud world. The moment the signs appeared, they would work together to suppress them. This was why they didn't make much progress in these 10,000 years. The Taoist faction was only spreading their teachings in dozens of worlds at the edge. The Buddhist faction was in a similar situation. Their situation was slightly better, but they only had 100 worlds. If not, they wouldn't have revolted and wanted to open another region to create a true paradise. This time, they wouldn't participate. Looking at it now, the rise of the God Emperor in the future would sweep an entire region. That was because the cloud world cultivators had been suppressed for too long. However, after the 100-year spiritual wave, they are in a low state. The sad part of the cloud world is that they can only suppress their spiritual energy. Only then can they prevent the other worlds from coveting it. To him, even if that heaven-opening artifact was taken out, the spiritual energy shouldn't be so low. Sealing the spiritual wave wasn't just to restrict martial arts. Zhong Shou's heart was filled with emotions. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. Whether or not the spiritual wave was sealed, it didn't matter to him. He told the coordinates of that world to Shirulin. Zhong Shou accompanied the two of them and talked about everything under the sun, chatting casually. He coaxed Rulin until she was beaming with joy. Zhong Shou went into secluded meditation once more. Within his palace, he used the Book of Ian to speed up his cultivation. Actually, with his current situation, he wasn't able to make much progress in terms of spiritual sense and true qi. The so-called cultivation was to continuously polish and refine those 24 instant space dragon pellet. Within the dragon pellet, he would perfect the talisman formation, causing it to change from illusionary to real and illusionary to merge into his soul. Apart from that, he had one more job. Shao Chen used his mind to form a saber and carved runes on a dragon tooth bit by bit. Before leaving Tianfang world, Shen Yuexian gave him a spiritual sense artifact crafting technique. From the beginning to the end, the entire sword had been sculpted bit by bit using soul power. Just like that, when the sword artifact was completed, without him needing to refine it, it was already filled with his spiritual sense imprint. He could control it with his heart, much stronger than normal sword artifacts. However, to carve out 10,000 of them one by one, it was a huge amount of work. At the start, Zhong Shou failed several times. This was the first time he knew that the dragon tooth was such a tough and overbearing item. Zhong Shou gathered his spiritual sense into the knife, and when it touched, his spiritual sense would shatter. He tried to forcefully, but he couldn't grasp the strength. He didn't craft the sword well, and instead, a few of the dragon teeth were destroyed. Zhong Shou had no choice but to use similar materials to replace it. After he felt familiar with it, he truly started. At this moment, a sword gradually took shape. Zhong Shou also noticed the benefits of such an artifact crafting method. After a few times, his control of his soul power started to get close to the microscopic level. Chapter 832. Zhong Shou sat alone at the back of the giant ship. 36 star dragon cores flickered around him. They flashed and changed positions. Actually, at this moment, they couldn't be called dragon pellets but true stars. They had totally merged with the stars in Zhong Shou's soul. At this moment, 2 months had passed since he met up with this fleet. As for the 24 dragon pills that he had refined back then, he had already completed the transformation between illusion and reality. However, in the end, he had to carve those dragon teeth into the 10 extreme Imperial Dao sword artifact. The increase was much less than what he had expected. On one hand, he was distracted. On the other hand, for the first 24 stars, Zhong Shou chose to start from the Daos that he was most familiar with and came into contact with the most. The stars after that were slightly more difficult. Zhong Shou made 12 at the same time. Only now did he complete the transformation. His strength improved once more. 2 months ago, his Universe Light sword and power were a little weaker than the Killing Path sword intent. 2 months later, he had surpassed it. With the help of the 36 stars, the Slaughter Sword Dao could surpass the Sword Intent Soul Realm with a single strike. At this moment, Zhong Shou could follow his thoughts. He could appear at any point of the 36 stars. These stars were between real and illusionary. They were the images of the heart image void dharma in this world. Unless one's soul power far exceeded his or grasped the space path, Otherwise, one wouldn't be able to harm him at all. With this set of stars, he was truly confident that he would be able to get out of any dangerous situation safely. In addition to these stars, there was also a sword array around him. There were a total of 12 of them. 10 extreme Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords. They all followed a specific trajectory and danced in the air in a circular manner. The tooth swords had no sharp edges. Due to Zhong Shou's clumsy skills, they looked really ugly. They looked totally harmless, and there was nothing special about them. At this moment, who knows if it was a coincidence or if Zhong Shou did it on purpose. A level 7 carp dragon that was commonly seen in the Jie River suddenly barged in without knowing what was going on. Then, the sword formation immediately came to life. Streaks of sword chi were unleashed, sweeping out in all directions, from inside out, from left to right. In the blink of an eye, the pitiful 7th-level carp dragon was slashed into pieces by the sword shadows. Only a rain of blood was left, scattering across the realm river. The palace was simply too small. Within the ship, Zhong Shou didn't dare to mess around like he did in Gantian Mountain. If he wanted to try out his divine ability, he would have to go to the stern of the ship where there was no one around or leave the ship. Even if there was any movement, it would not damage the hull. However, because of this special environment, there were naturally some spectators around. It's really a bit of a killjoy. That's right, it was said that the meat of the carp dragon was the most delicious. Especially after the 7th level, their deliciousness is the best in the world. What a pity. The 10 extreme Imperial Dao Annihilation sword formation was indeed worthy of its name of annihilation. It directly slashed the huge carp dragon into meat paste. In the end, the true dragon bloodline hated false dragons with inferior bloodlines. They would kill anyone they saw. His 12-10 extreme Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords also inherited this specialty. When Zifang and Tai Chi heard that, they were speechless. What scenery was there to speak of in this dark void? Wasn't he the one who slashed the carp dragon into such a state? Jingyin closed her eyes, chanting the primordial ancient Buddha. Then, she persuaded, "Ruler, you must know that all life is equal. Although the matters of the world are like eating strong meat. Everything in the world has its own cycle. However, life can't be treated so lightly. This carp dragon didn't offend us. The ship has many resources and doesn't need to use it as food. How can we kill it so cruelly just for fun?" When Zhong Shou heard that, he felt that it made sense and felt a little ashamed. However, he definitely wouldn't say that he was unable to fully control this 10 extreme Imperial Dao Annihilation sword formation. It was like when the sword formation was initially crafted, it had a life and didn't listen to his orders. Instinctively, it would wipe out all things within the formation. What was weird was that Zhong Shou didn't sense any artifact spirits within the swords. He was filled with questions and wanted to ask Xin Yuexian. Unfortunately, at this moment they were too far away from Tianfang World and he couldn't run all the way back. Luckily, after he analyzed the sword formation, he basically confirmed that this sword artifact didn't have the strength to attack its master. However, there were some spiritual patterns within the formation that were a little weird. It wasn't much, but it didn't have to be like that. He could only deduce that the person who passed down this sword formation had a huge animosity with the living beings of the world. Or maybe he didn't reach the end realm and became mentally sick before he died. At this moment, Zhong Shou was helpless. Not to mention that after this formation was formed, it wouldn't be a threat to him. Even if it had the strength to attack its master, it needed to drink poison to quench its thirst and grasp a certain amount of strength first. Speaking of which, the ancient talisman that Xin Yuexian sold to him was being used up more and more. The person who put the curse on him must be using all his strength to frantically search for his location. He originally thought that he could drag it out for half a year, but now it was at most 4 months. The Cloud World had Song Xing Dao taking care of it, so Zhong Shou wasn't worried about the safety of his family. The only thing he was worried about was Ruoshui and Rulan, as well as the 300,000 soldiers who followed his orders to conquer the outer region. In other words, he had to open up the situation in the shortest amount of time. Then, he would go all out to deal with that person's crazy pursuit, until the two of them fought to the death. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. Zhong Shou smiled and returned to normal. He sighed once more. What is even more unfortunate is that I can't find a suitable opponent for this sword formation to test its ability. At the same time, he looked behind him with a bitter gaze. Zifang was expressionless as he sat down and entered a meditative state. Tai Chi's body shuddered and he felt a chill run down his spine. After Zhong Shou crafted the 10th sword, he wanted to find someone to test this sword formation. Coincidentally, at that time, he also had some challenges. He wanted to see how far away he was from this invincible person in the cloud world. However, the outcome was too horrible to look at. The process was just 10 breaths, but it once again dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. If it wasn't for Zhong Shou stopping at the last moment, he would have been ripped apart in the formation. However, from then on, it left a psychological shadow. When he saw this sword formation, he instinctively stayed far away from it. At this moment, he felt weird as he looked at the shining stars around Zhong Shou. Zhong Shou had displayed the sword formation a few times, but these stars only appeared on the outside and weren't used. It was covered in a mysterious veil, making it tough for one to guess its ability. It was a little similar to the Taoist faction's cycle of stars falling technique. A few months ago, Zhong Shou swept the central continent. He should have obtained a portion of this Taoist faction technique legacy. Did this fellow change to cultivate this technique? This could make up for Zhong Shou's weakness in spells. However, the core of this technique was definitely within the common people's path vast habitat. For Zhong Shou to walk on this path, he had to either perfect it himself or forcefully snatch it. Anyways, it would be tough. Zifang and Tai Chi acted like they didn't know anything. Naturally, the other spirit realm experts wouldn't agree. Ruoshui had the intention to agree, but Zhong Shou himself wasn't willing. The people at the back of the boat were instantly silent. Only Zhao Yanran scoffed coldly, cocky. Zhong Shou was indeed gleeful. When the sword formation was just formed, it had the strength to suppress spirit realm experts. Then, after a set of 10,800 dragon tooth swords was completed, what would happen? Just as he was about to speak, he mocked back. Zhong Shou's brows rose up and then he smiled. Forget it, if you all aren't willing, then I won't force you. The person to test the sword has already arrived. After traveling for several months, they finally arrived at the chaotic land in his memory. In the next instance, a cold scoff spread out from the distance. This is the Yuanren world. Where did all of you come from? Why are you all here? Along with these words, dozens of intents spread out in the air, reaching over with their spiritual senses. Zhong Shou didn't speak. He had no intention of being arrogant about his identity as the ruler. However, at this time, it wasn't appropriate for him to personally speak. In front of this giant ship, there were naturally people who spoke. We are the Qian soldiers of the cloud world. We are here to expand our land. We heard that the Yuanren world has no master, so we are here to take it. Before he finished, maniacal laughter spread out from opposite. Cloud world de Qian? I was wondering which power it was? So it is the country bumpkins of the cloud world. After hiding for 10,000 years, you are finally willing to run out from your turtle shell? Another person said, this place is occupied by us. You all can return to where you came from. If not, once the battle starts, don't blame us for being merciless and killing all of you. This is where our heroes fight. How is there a place for all of you? When these words spread out, Tai Chi and Zhao Yanran's faces turned green. No matter who it was, if they were scolded as country bumpkins, they would definitely react. Zifang's expression was also really ugly, although the Buddhist faction was an outsider in the cloud world. However, he himself was also a member of the cloud world. In other words, he was one of the country bumpkins that these people were talking about. The fleet was still casually moving forwards, heading towards the Yuanren world. Tai Chi and the others all returned to their positions, their auras rising. It covered the ship to threaten. A few people finally appeared in the distance. Dozens of large ships of different styles appeared one after another. They charged over from all directions, forming a pincer attack. 15 Spirit Realm, you actually have some strength. However, with just you all, you are still a little lacking. Before Xiao Chen finished speaking, a saber light pierced through the air. Like a mountain collapsing, the aura was vast and intense. Zhong Shou, who was behind the ship, smiled happily. The few people in front of them were both trying to stop them from moving forwards and also to test them. Who knew that there would actually be people who attacked first? Shen Yuexian once said that this 10 extreme Imperial Dao Destruction sword formation, all the sword artifacts had to see blood before it could be considered unsealed. Till date, only 3 swords had seen blood. Who knew that at this moment there would be so many people who could sacrifice themselves to the sword? The blade light landed and Tai Chi charged up from the ship with a sword. The weapons clashed, instantly shaking the void. Tai Chi's body instantly fell down like a kite with a broken string. However, the giant ship was perfectly fine. That person laughed out loud. Spirit and martial arts merger, I underestimated you. Just at this moment, the 12 white dragon-tooth swords in front of Zhong Shou all flew up. Chapter 833. The sword light rose up and silently fled into the distance. That initial celestial realm blade-wielding cultivator didn't sense anything. The blade shadow flashed, bringing with it millions of yellow light as it struck down. With this person leading the way, the many cultivators in front as well as the numerous intents that spread over were all tempted to attack. There were already several streaks of light that charged over. Dozens of spaceships were all on high alert, their weapons facing one another. At this moment, the 1210 Extreme Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords finally arrived. The blade-wielding cultivator was first shocked as he looked at the bone swords that were flying over. Originally, he was shocked at how these swords were so close to him without a sound. However, when he looked at the swords, they were extremely ugly, even the spiritual energy reaction was weak. He scoffed coldly, "This is a sword formation? This is the first time I have seen such a weird thing. Is this a specialty of your cloud world?" His face was filled with disdain, but his reaction was really careful. The blade light retracted slightly and then he didn't defend and counterattacked. He slashed out, bringing with it the strength of mountains as he slashed through the air. With a wave of his hand, the entire space was split into 2. Vaguely, the 12 sword shadows were separated. Using such a method, no matter what kind of sword formation it was suitable and had been tested time and time again. As expected, the moment he slashed out, the connection between the 12 swords was forcefully broken. The cycle of the sword path also paused for a moment. The entire sword formation was forcefully blocked by his blade energy and was a breath away from the celestial realm. They couldn't get close and were in a total mess. I heard that 10,000 years ago, the Cloud World Martial Path was extremely prosperous. There were 6 Saint Venerables who came from the Cloud World. Today it seems like they don't live up to their name. No, I should say that they are making a joke out of themselves. However, in the next moment, before his words landed, the 12 white swords flashed once more. They actually teleported and in a blink of an eye, they appeared beside him. When the sword energy exploded out, the blade-wielding cultivator felt the space around him suddenly twist abnormally. The lower half of his body was speeding up while the upper half was slowing down. The left half of his body was as heavy as 1,000 mountains. The right half was totally weightless, as light as a feather. There were also two different but extremely strong repulsive forces that descended upon him. At this moment, he felt as if there were more than 10 experts attacking him at the same time. Before he could figure out what was going on, he was sliced into pieces by the aura of the sword formation. The Yuan soul was unable to escape in time and was instantly torn apart. Zhong Shou chuckled as he watched from afar. Then, he sighed and thought to himself, why bother? He was just worried that he wouldn't be able to find a suitable chicken to kill as an example. However, this person had jumped out impatiently. He was a little shocked by the strength of the sword formation. The 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation was indeed similar to his 3,000 star falling technique. It also controlled various Daos, but the 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation was supported by a sword artifact. As for his 3,000 starfall art, it used the stars in the void of his heart as a weapon. One was internal while the other was external. In terms of the level of conception, his 3,000 star descent was naturally stronger. However, this 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation was much easier to form. If one didn't ask for the heart and weapon to be totally merged, then one could ask a good friend to help craft a sword artifact. It was much easier. However, the two techniques in his hands could complement each other and perfect each other. At this moment, although he was only using the power of the sword formation, he also borrowed a portion of the 3,000 star falling power. When the sword formation was spread out, each sword could use a Tao technique. There was no need for spells, it could be instantly cast. This celestial realm cultivator was naturally slain with one sword. When this person died, the entire void was silent. The restless aura in the void was like ice water was poured over it, instantly becoming silent. The few figures that were flying over also stopped halfway, their expressions cautious. However, in just half a breath, someone hollered in rage. What a bunch of cowardly cowards! A cloud world native with some skill, just a sword formation with instant space ability. Were they so scared that they ran out? Zhong Shou's eyes squinted as he glanced over, only to see one person still charge over. The blood-red light soared into the sky, and within it, there seemed to be a figure holding a long staff. It turned into 100,000 feet large and smashed down towards a ship. The 3 spirit realm cultivators on the other side only tried to defend slightly before they all let out muffled groans and seemed to have been injured. Even with the spiritual formation on the ship supporting, the 3 of them working together couldn't block it. Initial Celestial Realm, Demon Path Cultivator? This person's combat strength was close to double that of the blade-wielding Martial Cultivator. The spiritual sense he spread out could also sense that the aura around him which he had suppressed started to become restless because of this person. Zhong Shou instantly laughed coldly, killing intent boiling in his eyes. It seemed like apart from using war to stop war, there was no other way. He had to use lightning speed to cut through the mess. This place was filled with dangers, and it wasn't a good place to train people. Who knew what the situation was like within the Yuanren world, and what kind of hardships would they have to go through? Before that, it was best to maintain everyone's combat strength. With his killing intent set, Zhong Shou rose into the air, leaving the ship and standing in the sky above the fleet. With a thought, the 12 white longswords flashed a few times, as quick as a shadow as they slashed toward the ball of blood light. The stick-wielding figure in the blood laughed coldly when he saw the situation. I am not that Urju. This sword formation isn't something that can be used on the stage. Can it do anything to me? The rod smacked out and the space within 1,000,000 feet was sealed. The aura was heavy and majestic, along with the sound of metal and stone clashing. It actually caused the 12 sword lights to scatter in all directions. It also stirred and caused the sword shadows to scatter even further. However, when this person's rod attack stopped, the 12 white sword lights turned back and struck down. How annoying! The blood-colored person didn't care at all. Another rod smashed the void. However, this strike was no longer able to disperse the sword formation. The 12 flying swords seemed to have a life of their own, extremely nimble, but they didn't lose their sharpness. They all followed a mysterious and indescribable trajectory. They all slashed down, clashing head-on and slashing into the gaps of the rod energy. Then, like a butcher dissecting a cow, it didn't use any strength at all as it smashed the giant rod into pieces inch by inch. Attacking from the weak points, it was really neat and clean. It was also really sharp. The person in the blood flames was first stunned. When he reacted, the 12 sword shadows had already slashed in front of him. The blood-colored energy that he was so proud of couldn't block these flying swords for even a moment. It was instantly forced aside. The person within didn't even have time to have a complete thought. Why did he feel that this sword formation was like 12 celestial realm cultivators who grasped different daos attacking him at the same time? Although this power was much weaker, it was still a lot weaker. It was definitely at the celestial realm. How could he block it? The sword light smashed across and another patch of blood rain scattered in the void. Blood Soul Lord, a few exclamations spread out from the distance. It was the name of the demon cultivator who had fallen in the blood light. As for the few cultivators who wanted to attack together with him, they were startled once more and stopped in their track. They were hesitating whether to continue or retreat. They all exchanged glances with one another, shock flashing in their eyes. At this moment, Blood Soul Lord and Urju, who were killed consecutively, no matter which one it was, they were all top people in the same grade, heroes. However, they were all slain by the sword formation with one sword. If the two of them were already like that, then what about them who were only at the spirit realm? More eyes gathered on the teen in the sky above the fleet. With a late spirit realm body, he stood proudly in the void alone. He was like a giant pillar that supported the heavens, facing the numerous cultivators all around. Zhong Shou didn't have the patience to wait for them to make their choice. Since he wanted to show off his strength, he couldn't hesitate at all. He couldn't even show any weakness or pity. He needed to be extremely strong to be able to shock these people. The cloud world had been silent for too long. Even if there were cultivators who left the cloud world, those truly outstanding people who relied on their own strength to reach the spirit realm wouldn't develop in the cloud world, which had fewer resources and a lower level. Those who remained in the cloud world were all grade 7 and grade 9 people who had the ability to travel in the void but couldn't improve further. They tried their best to leave the cloud world and choose another place. They even directly headed to the Tianfang world to advance. As time went on, people started to look down on them. Those 1210 extreme Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords turned around and turned into dozens of streaks of light. In just a breath, a ball of blood mist floated about. It caused the dozens of cultivators in the distance to be slightly startled. They were stunned as they looked on as one of them was sliced into pieces by the sword light. Actually, this person was just slightly closer to him. Apart from spiritual sense suppression, he didn't even attack this cloud world fleet. They were filled with shock and rage. Shortly after, another person was sliced into pieces by the sword light. These two people were just the beginning. Closely after, several spirit realm cultivators were sliced down. It was pretty much a one-sided massacre. The sword formation was so sharp that no one was able to block it for even a moment. The remaining people didn't have any intention to go against this fleet. The spaceships around also avoided them and scattered in panic. Zhong Shou was expressionless as he looked forward coldly. Those who are isolated and arrogant will be killed. Those who are threatening will be killed. Those who are 3 breaths away will be killed. When you all die, don't say that I didn't warn you. It was completely silent in the void. Pretty much everyone consciously left 3 breaths away from the celestial realm. Just a few breaths later, a golden-robed person suddenly appeared. His majestic voice shook the void. What an arrogant person will be killed! Those who are threatening will be killed. I have roamed the worlds for thousands of years and have never seen such an arrogant junior like you. Before he finished, a silver light shot out from Zhong Shou's sleeves. It traveled swiftly through the void. In the eyes of everyone, it was actually a chain of thousands of shadows. When all the silver shadows disappeared, that flying knife was already pinned to the center of this person's brows. Chapter 834. What a good show of strength slay! Slay those who threaten. I have roamed the world for thousands of years, and have never seen such an arrogant junior like you. Before his words landed, a silver light shot out from Zhong Shou's sleeves. It traveled swiftly in the void. In the eyes of everyone, it was actually a chain of thousands of shadows. When all the silver shadows disappeared, that flying knife had already stabbed into the brow of the person who spoke. The moment he appeared and said a few words, his life force was wiped out and there was no more sound. Zhong Shou's brow rose up slightly, following which he touched his nose in embarrassment. I nearly forgot that there was something I didn't say. In front of me, those who speak rudely will also be slain. He was too lazy to speak nonsense with this person, which was why he killed him with one sword. The moment he said these words, no one dared to reply. In the surrounding void, everyone present kept silent. Everyone here recognized the person from before. He was a famous person, the ruler of a world. His name was Jujing. Although he was a factionless cultivator, he had recently joined a large power. Not only was his cultivation really amazing intermediate celestial realm, he also had many experts under him. But who would have thought that today, he would die under this person's blade just because he spoke out of turn and stood up for those who had fallen. Those spaceships didn't dare to get close, afraid that they would be careless. They smashed into the area that Zhong Shou said he would definitely slay. Who knew if the so-called three breaths was spirit realm, celestial realm, or God realm? Those who speak rudely will also be slain. Although those words were said calmly, along with the death of Jujing, it was really shocking. They were also shocked. Looking at this teen, his aura was really hidden. They could only sense that his strength was at late spirit realm. However, why was he so strong? So strong that Jujing had no way to fight back. Also, what kind of ability was that flying knife? At this moment, apart from the 300,000 Deqian elites, their eyes were filled with respect. Even the disciples and Kenzo sect swordsmen who did not know Zhong Shou's real identity as Tsang Xingdao were filled with respect and admiration. Even the eyes of those Buddhist disciples with calm mental states flashed with a strange light. Today, I finally know that the invincible name of the Cloud World is true. It is indeed the Blood Sword Devil Lord's doing. To think that an immortal realm cultivator would be killed with a single saber strike just because of a disagreement. That's the legendary Six Gods flying knife technique? How sharp! Rebuking an area, moving unhindered and invincible. I don't seek immortality. I just want to have a little of the Monster Lord's might in the future. Zifang, who was on another spaceship, looked into the sky with a serious expression. After a long time, he let out a long sigh. They all said that the Cloud World is about to rise. The spiritual wave had yet to rise, and there were already such people, it was hard for them not to prosper. The few Buddhist venerables planned things in the Cloud World a long time ago. Did they expect this? After saying that, he smiled at silent sound behind him. Are you not used to it? Such killing matters are close to barbaric. I'm afraid it doesn't suit your personality. Silent Sound shook her head and thought about it. I heard that when the Great Lotus stepped into the secret world, he was obstructed everywhere. He used the 12 purple gold lotus platforms, the 3 splendor Dharma sword to kill 100,000 demons and demons, destroying mountains and temples. After hundreds of battles, he finally calmed down the secret world and made it our Buddhist faction paradise. Master also taught us that the Buddhist faction wants people to be kind and merciful. However, there are also protector arhats and vajras. To spread the Buddhist path, one has to do things like Azura. Although she said that, Silent Sound's face turned ashen white. Zifang's eyes flashed and then he smiled. There's no need to force yourself. However, you must remember that even our Buddhist faction has the humiliation of being chased out of the fan world. While the two of them spoke, there were changes in the void. Several people stepped out of the void one after another. Their cultivations were high, no weaker than that of Jiujing. Their faces were really ugly. One of them bowed towards Zhongsho. Tianfang Guild Tan Jing greets cultivator friend. My ancestors came from the cloud world. Speaking of which, we are from the same place. Be it his tone or actions, they were all really respectful. Tan Jing raised his head and looked over with a questioning gaze. What is your name, friend? For you to be able to kill Jiujing with one knife, you must be famous in the cloud world. Or maybe I, Tan Jing, have heard of you before? Zhongsho swept the few of them and knew that they were the ones who could make the decisions here. Before this, they hid behind the scenes and allowed their subordinates to chase them out. Only when things got out of hand did they personally appear. However, since they welcomed them with smiles, it wasn't good for him to immediately kill them. De Qian still had a long time outside of the cloud world. Since he had already shown his might, it wasn't good for him to make enemies everywhere. Speaking of which, he had some grievances with Tianfang Guild. However, that elder Kunran died in the hands of Fangjue, who wanted the items of the first Dragon Hall. Someone saw him snatching the Universe Light Hall, so Tsangyan Hall killed him to silence him. It had nothing to do with Zhongsho at all. Even if someone asked, he definitely wouldn't admit it. I am Zhongsho. Just 4 words, he didn't mention his background or his name. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but because if he did, people would look down on him and not treat him as a person. As expected, the people opposite him were at a loss. It was obvious that they didn't know his name. Zhongsho didn't care. It was best if they heard about it, but it was okay if they didn't. Did he have to explain it to them in detail? How many people had he killed in the Taoist faction and how many things had he done? He laughed and Zhongsho opened his mouth to ask. In that case, what is the purpose of all of you obstructing me here? Could it be that you also want to challenge me to a duel? The 5 of them frowned. They heard the provocation in his words. It was precisely because of this that everyone present was surprised and bewildered, and it was difficult for them to determine the truth. To be so confident and fearless, he definitely had some confidence. Moreover, the 5 of them had no confidence in being able to block that silver knife. Then, at this moment, it was best to delay and bear with it. One of them broke out into a laugh. Cultivator, you must be joking. The Yuanren world still has no owner. Since we are here, naturally, you are here too. We do want to stop you and have one less opponent, but unfortunately, we don't have the strength. He said it calmly, but his expression also turned solemn. However, although we fight, we have to be restrained. This Yuanren world battle can be left to the juniors. We celestial cultivators just need to look on from the side and don't need to interfere. After all, we cultivate for the sake of immortality. There is no need to fight to the death for such things. I wonder if fellow Taoist agrees with what I said? When Zhongsho heard that, his eyes flashed and he said curiously, I came from the cloud world and am not clear about the outer region matters. Is this the rule of the world? Seeing the people opposite him nod their heads in agreement, Zhongsho asked, then, what is going on with the few of you? Chapter 835. Including Tianfang Guild Tanjing, the few of them felt awkward when they heard this and were speechless. The 2 people who took the lead were undoubtedly above the immortal stage. Zhong Shou laughed coldly, his gaze looking right into their hearts. Forget it. There is no need for you to explain. I roughly know about such matters. Be it inside or outside the cloud world, they are all the same. Only when the fist is useless will they reason with you. If it wasn't for Long Ying stepping into End Realm right away, why would the Taoist faction compromise with him? In today's battle, if he didn't use these few Celestial Realm cultivators to show his strength, they probably wouldn't have appeared. When Tan Jing heard this, he nodded his head slightly. I won't hide this from you. Why would an eagle talk about fairness with an ant? Isn't that amusing? Cultivator, today you showed us how strong you are, so naturally we have to use these rules. The other people didn't say anything. It was obvious that they agreed with Tan Jing's words. Zhong Shou was in deep thought. A moment later he nodded his head. These rules are not bad. However, I am not a Celestial Realm cultivator. Moreover, in my eyes, you are no different from those people who died just now. Eagles won't reason with ants, but how are you all different from ants? The moment these words were said, the expressions of all the cultivators in the air changed, and they couldn't say a word. A moment later, Tan Jing opened his mouth. Although Tan Jing isn't your opponent, I think our Tianfang Guild has the right to talk to you? It is best if we don't joke about such things. Moreover, your cultivation is only at the spirit realm. However, no one here dares to look down on you as a spirit realm cultivator. You really have a sharp tongue. Zhong Shou scoffed, thinking to himself that he was joking. That might not be the case. He didn't agree or disagree, just asking flatly, where is Jiu Jing staying? How much land does he control in this Yuanren world? He could tell at a glance that the unlucky celestial cultivator who died under his flying knife was on the same level as them in terms of status and strength. In the Yuanren realm, he would definitely be a hero. This person was the lord of a world, and the original world that he ruled was one that Zhong Shou didn't need to think about. Once Jiu Jing died, there would definitely be someone who would take over his position. Moreover, it would definitely be under the control of some great power. However, in this Yuanren realm, Zhong Shou would definitely take the land that this person controlled. The people on the other side all looked at each other. One of them helplessly said, in the southwest region of the Yuanren realm, this person ruled this place and established a celestial dynasty. There were 3 immortal cultivators, 20 spirit cultivators, and about 10,000 cultivators. It had jurisdiction over the 7 countries and 10,000 miles of land. Occupy an immortal residence called the Yuanjing Palace. Tan Qiu also spoke. This Reverend Jiujing has an extraordinary background. He is one of the deacons of the League of the 7 Heretics. It is okay for fellow cultivator to occupy his land. However, in the future, you need to be really careful. The League of the 7 is one of the powers in this region, and they have never lacked 7 Saint Realm experts. Although they aren't here, their strength is really great. These words were both a reminder and a warning. They were trying to show their goodwill and sell him a favor. It was also to tell Zhong Shou that he had caused a lot of trouble, and it was best if he didn't find a chance to cause trouble. Zhong Shou was deep in thought. The so-called Celestial Dynasty was also a cultivator power. It was similar to a normal dynasty but also different. All the official systems and governing laws were more or less the same. However, under the Celestial Dynasty, there weren't any normal people, only strong cultivators. Within the cloud world, the most famous one was the Lu family. They used the sky-burning Celestial Dynasty to rule the 800 worlds. In the mortal world, they supported various countries to rule the people. With the mortal countries as a buffer, they could reduce the invasion of the King Path power to the greatest extent. However, even then, it wasn't enough. Thus, they split the 800 worlds into dozens of pieces, with dozens of country lords. This caused the Lu family to have internal conflict. Even the God Emperor of the future was like that. After unifying the cloud world, He personally broke it apart and built the Celestial Dynasty. He split the original land into various countries, causing it to break apart. In the future, if he wanted to go up against the Liu family and also wanted to reach the peak of the Martial Path, he would have to walk this path. However, at this moment, the so-called king energy hadn't contaminated his foundations. He didn't think about it and didn't care much about it. Now that Tanjing mentioned it, he remembered that it was time for him to consider his next step and how he should proceed. As for the League of the Seven, he had never heard of it. At least there were 7 Saint Realm experts, which sounded decent. However, if there weren't any Saint Venerables, they were all scum in this region. At most, these scum would be slightly bigger. They were too far away, so there was no need for him to care. "Thank you for your reminder." Nodding his head, Zhongsho said, "As for the rules, I still need to think about it." After saying this, he didn't say any more nonsense. He turned into a beam of light and returned to his ship. As for whether or not he would follow the agreement, he still needed to see whether or not Rulin, Tai Chi and the others could stand up in the Yuanren world. Moreover, if they weren't strong enough, or if they were suppressed by the other sides. If Zhongsho agreed to this agreement, wouldn't he be tying himself up? That was something that a wise person wouldn't do. The 6 ships continued forwards. This time there was nothing stopping them. The cultivators in the air hesitated slightly before they all backed off. Even the few celestial realm cultivators who appeared just now were nowhere to be seen. The moment they came into contact with the spatial barrier, the 6 spaceships exerted their strength and shattered it into pieces. In the next instance, like a bubble merging into a world. The moment they entered, Tai Chi, who had already returned to the flagship, his brows rose up in surprise. "This place is not bad. The spiritual energy is actually a little thicker than our cloud world." Zifang nodded his head slightly when he heard that. The spiritual energy density here was indeed a little thicker than the cloud world. He then spread out his spiritual sense. A moment later, he spoke again. "This world has a radius of approximately 50,000 miles. There is a city not far away. The people within are no different from us. Although the population isn't as dense as our cloud world, within 200 miles, there are still 400,000 people. The more people there were, the more believers the Buddhist faction would have in the future. The world that Zhongsho chose was indeed not bad. In a medium-sized world, it could be considered one of the best. The division of big and small worlds was really complicated. In the eyes of cultivators, the first was spiritual energy, followed by land. Some worlds were billions of miles wide. However, there were very few living beings and spiritual energy wasn't abundant. It could only be considered a small-sized world. 10,000 years ago, the cloud world was 1,000,000 miles wide. Spiritual energy was extremely thick and could accept end-realm realms. Without a doubt, it was a large-sized world. Just from the name of the celestial world, one could tell a little. As for Yuanlian world, it was just a little short of stepping into the gates of a large world. However, Zifang's words were filled with worry. The better the environment and the more resources there were, the more people would covet it. Naturally, the battles would be more dangerous. Although the 3 factions that followed Zhongsho over included the 3 factions of the Cloud World, any one of them could suppress the so-called League of the Seven. However, now that the Cloud World was in chaos, how could they be distracted? Moreover, these opponents might be end-realm realms. After all, the outer region Saint Venerables had been suppressing the Cloud World and the Buddhist faction for a long time. Zhongsho didn't care. After confirming the direction, he headed southwest. Although those few people didn't say the exact location of the Yuanjing Palace, to Zhongsho, it was just a matter of time. Finding this celestial manor wasn't a difficult matter. The 6 ships spread out and the consciousnesses of more than a dozen spirit realm cultivators swept out in all directions. In just a moment, Zhongsho found something. He left the ship and with a flash, he was above the clouds. The so-called Yuanjing Palace Celestial Manor was actually floating in the cloud layer. Many extremely tough but light as dust Hongyun stones built the foundations of the Celestial Manor. 1,000,000 feet from north to south, the scale was really majestic and majestic. There were many places that were empty. 70% of the halls weren't completed. Zhongsho looked at it and took in a deep cold breath. Compared to this palace, the Hanyan Palace that his father left him was like a straw hut in the countryside. The halls were majestic and majestic. The pavilions and pavilions were exquisite and beautiful, giving off the aura of a celestial manor. The first and third dragon halls were stronger than this place, but after all, they were built by the dragon race and their aesthetic standards were different from humans. For example, Yi Feiyan was conflicted about the fact that he didn't have a horn. Today, I finally know how rich the outer region is. Speaking of which, the land he was in charge of was half of the Yuanren world, but it wasn't as majestic. This Jiujing was just an intermediate celestial realm, and was able to defeat him. They are the ones who are too vicious. Tai Chi followed behind and said disapprovingly, looking at the people in this world, not only are there few cultivators, but the people have no way to make a living. Many places don't have enough to eat and there are many starving people. Compared to the Deqian under-ruler, it is a huge difference. This world's spiritual energy is really abundant, 50,000 miles of land and at most 2 billion people. I really don't know how these people ended up in such a state. In the cloud world, even those famous tyrants in history wouldn't cause such a situation to occur in their country. He also suddenly understood why the cloud world went all out against the alien race. Those few saint venerables who no one knew about during the cloud desolate era didn't hesitate to fight to the death against the alien race after reaching End Realm. Probably wasn't just because of that heaven-opening artifact. Brother Feng, you praise me too much. If it was normal times, Zhongsho would definitely enjoy Tai Chi's praise. However, at this moment, he didn't bother about it. His heart was dripping blood. Jiujing was already dead, so naturally, the so-called celestial dynasty that this person built wouldn't exist anymore. All his subordinates scattered like birds and beasts. However, he didn't forget that before he left. He swept all the treasures and items within the Yuanjing Palace clean. Forget about that, Zhongsho could barely accept it. However, from what he could sense with his spiritual will, there were a few people not too far off in the distance who were attempting to break the seal and enter what looked like a treasure trove. Chapter 836. Preposterous. If he didn't know or didn't see it. Naturally, Zhongsho wouldn't care. However, at this moment, just by looking at the tight restrictions, he knew that the treasury was really rich. How could he allow others to touch something that was about to fall into his hands? Stealing someone's wealth was a huge hatred. With a thought, the 12 white sword shadows landed from the air. They nailed around the treasury, sword intent surging and sweeping all around. In the end, he wouldn't randomly kill people for these treasures. He just used the 10 Extreme Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth sword as a warning. The surrounding cultivators obviously knew about the strength of this sword formation. Their faces turned ashen white. Some of them who knew what was going on immediately fled. As for the greedy ones, they hesitated for a moment before flying away. In the end, outside matters were more important than his life. Zhongsho flew over and took over these people to continue breaking the restrictions. He was lazy to deduce the structure of the restrictions one by one. He just used the 10 Extreme Imperial Dao sword formation to forcefully attack and destroy everything. A moment later, Zhongsho stood within the treasury. The item inside didn't surprise him, but it didn't disappoint him either. It was roughly 1% of the Qin Emperor Subtomb's Mind Stone storage, which was just 20 high Xian grade Mind Stones. It was already not bad for a celestial realm cultivator to have such a treasury. However, there were many other miscellaneous items, pretty much filling up the entire 30,000-foot treasury. He didn't feel anything here, but when Tai Chi took a look, he was surprised. Cherry pattern stone, 13,000 cubic meters. They are all high-grade cherry pattern stones. This Yuanren world actually has such items? This jade is so weird. Is it the legendary heart-questioning jade? When Zhong Shou heard this, he laughed to himself. Cherry pattern stone was a type of sword training material, and normal spiritual artifacts and weapons couldn't be used. However, to sword cultivators, it was really crucial and even indispensable. Adding in a small amount of cherry pattern stone powder could greatly increase the connection between the cultivator and the sword. Increasing the agility of the sword and sensing the sword intent would greatly facilitate the initiation of sword cultivation. The cherry stone mines in the Cloud World were mostly controlled by the Kenzo sect, but even so, it was far from enough. Only 1,000 cubes were produced every year, which greatly limited the number and combat strength of sword cultivators. As for the heart-questioning stone, it had another function, which was to aid in the cultivation of one's mind. Unlike those strange treasures that could cleanse one's soul, this item was not tainted by inner demons, but it was able to attract distracting thoughts in one's heart. Wearing it on one's body would constantly interrogate one's soul. It was as though one was undergoing a demonic tribulation. If one could subdue the conscience stone and not be affected by it, one's soul would naturally become more perfect. They were also rare treasures, and there were as many as 30 of them here. Usually, such a large amount meant that there were large mines in the Yuanren realm. There were still a lot of these two treasures. As expected, when Zifang rushed over and saw the treasures in the room, his expression changed. The two of them looked at each other, and both of them showed some regret. Before this, they definitely didn't expect that their first expedition to the outer region would yield such gains. Just the treasures in this storage room were close to 30% of what they had invested in this time. In the future, there would be large amounts of gains from the various mines. Before they set off, the Deqian Zong Shou would take half, while Tsang Xingdao, Kenzo sect, and Buddhist faction would split the remaining half. Such a distribution couldn't be changed. Internally, Tsang Xingdao had 3 sects, 6 schools, 8 Buddhist faction, and 7 Kenzo sect. The distribution ratio was different. If he knew that this would happen, he would have fought for more for the vast habitat. Just now I asked a spirit realm factionless cultivator. I heard that this Yuanren realm was only discovered 100 years ago. This Abbot Jiujing has actually accumulated such wealth. As for how he asked and the process of asking, Zifang didn't mention it. I heard that there are many mountains in the southwest. Although the resources are thin, they comprehend the wind. There are 50 spiritual mind mines and numerous other mines. This was why the place where Jiujing was at was the most desolate. However, the dozens of celestial realm cultivators this time were all envious. Zhong Shou felt more and more that it was a wise choice to choose this person to show off his strength. Then, he heard Tai Chi say, "The important thing now is to count the various resources and take over the various mines. In case people think otherwise." The moment he said this, the other people who rushed over all nodded their heads. Just from the chaos in the Yuanjing Palace, one could understand a thing or two about him. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Before Jiujing's men left, they definitely wouldn't be clean. They would definitely go all out to scour and sweep up all the treasures. Zhao Yanran frowned. Then, how should we split the items here? The storage room was instantly silent. Everyone exchanged glances with one another, a bright glow flashing in their eyes. When they looked at one another, sparks flew all around. Originally, it was the fairest to split according to value. Then, there was a difference between needing and not needing these spiritual items. For example, that cherry patterned stone. Tai Chi naturally wanted to swallow it all up. However, the Buddhist faction Tsang Xingdao also needed such things. Especially the latter, who had many different things in the sect, and many sword cultivators. Zhong Shou also felt that the atmosphere was slowly turning cold. He instantly felt a slight headache, thinking to himself that they hadn't even gained a stable footing and they were already fighting amongst themselves? We have taken down the items and territory, but how should we deal with this League of the Seven? How will we transport these things back to Gantian? Just 2 short sentences caused everyone to come back to their senses. Thinking about how they had just arrived here, they weren't in a rush to split the items. They could just slowly discuss it. Now, it was best to control those minds and transport. This place was 4 months away from Diqian, but there were only 6 spaceships. How to transport was also a problem. There were many things here. Not only was there a huge amount, but most of them couldn't be kept in heaven and earth bags and had to be stored with special spells. Strictly speaking, the reason why they were able to occupy this place was because of the strength of Zhong Shou's sword. The 3 factions didn't put in much effort. If they were to divide things like this, it would be a little illegitimate. The League of the Seven is okay. Since we had an agreement, we naturally can't stay out of it. Zifang smiled and then asked, "As for the 7 countries under Jujing, how is the ruler prepared to deal with them?" Zhong Shou's brow rose up. This was another matter. Thinking about it for a moment, he opened his mouth. This matter isn't rushed. We know nothing about the geography of the Yuanren world. We are at a loss and don't know where to start. These 7 countries, let's summon them to the court and see what kind of people they have before making a decision. He wasn't prepared to keep the kings that Jujing left, but he needed suitable people to take over. Chapter 837. The 300,000 soldiers took a full 4 days to settle down. Without a doubt, a large portion of them were housed within this Yuanjing palace. To build this celestial manor, Jujing had pretty much gathered all the wealth and resources in the area he ruled. Within this world, there were very few cultivators. Jujing could also gather all the large and small spiritual veins in the heavens and earth here. As a result, the environment within the Yuanjing Palace could be compared to the shrines of the cloud world, and it was a great place to cultivate. Moreover, the number of people it could house far exceeded those few famous shrines. Zhong Shou was delighted. This time the people he brought out were the true elites of the Diqian army. Not only had they been through hundreds of battles, but their talents were also not bad. With such an environment and rich resources, in just a few months there would be a large batch of people who would raise their grade. If it was in the cloud world, for his normal subordinates to have such cultivation conditions, it would probably take 50 years for them to have such a chance. Tai Chi has already sent people to investigate those mined stones. They are rich in resources. I heard that based on the current production, we won't be lacking for 1,500 years. We don't lack mined stones, and we also have a lot of spiritual herbs. Who knows, maybe 10 years later, the 300,000 people here can all reach grade 4. 300,000 true Big Dipper sword soldiers and Big Dipper crossbow soldiers already have 20% of the strength that Great Qin used to sweep the cloud world. At this moment, within Diqian, although there were tens of thousands of Big Dipper sword soldiers, they were only grade 3. They were a greatly reduced version of grade 3, the difference in strength was too huge. However, although there were many surprises, Zhong Shou also had a headache. 300,000 people moved into the Yuanren world, and all their food and toiletries were now in his hands. At this moment, he really missed Zhang Huai and Renhua. With these 2 people, who knew how much of his problems were saved. He wanted to push the responsibility to Shi Rulan, but looking at her thin and weak body, he couldn't bear to do so. Out of these 300,000 people, he didn't find any suitable administrative talents. Why didn't I think about it when I came? Zhong Shou sighed. He felt that his hair was about to turn white from worry. If that's the case, I'm afraid we can only use the Celestial Dynasty system. the 300,000 soldiers all had their own commanders, so there was no need for him to worry too much. Within the various countries there were also different political systems. In that case, he would only need to consider the overall situation, which would save him a lot of trouble. Even when he was not around, serene could do it for him. He remembered that the Chu Shui lion race had dominated the Cloud Sea for over 10 years. Their strategy was pretty good. This girl was not only an unparalleled general, but also a talented commander. However, compared to Kong Yao, she was slightly inferior. There were pros and cons to this method. The pros were that he didn't have to worry too much about it. The cons were that he couldn't control everything within his sphere of influence. However, these people had just arrived in the Yuanren world, and they only had 300,000 people, so they couldn't do everything in their hands. There was no need to think too much about what to choose. After the first few days of being busy, Zhong Shou finally had enough time to study the 3,000 star falling technique and the 10 extreme imperial Dao destruction sword formation. These two techniques were not only related to his Dao but also directly related to his current combat strength. That dangerous and indiscernible life and death battle was getting closer and closer to him. Zhong Shou had to go all out. During this period of time, the other people didn't slack off either. Zhao Yanran and Tai Chi led people to scout the resources of the Yuanren world. Serene and the various generals went around to map out the terrain. On one hand, it was to understand the land under their rule. On the other hand, it was to prepare for war. The dozens of spirit fox hidden guards that Ruoshui brought all spread out. The fox race bloodline was best at illusionary technique. Scouting out the situation was what they were good at. After close to a month, they finally had some clues about the situation in the Yuanren world. Celestial Order, Han Ling Order, Judu Xianting, Shura race, as well as the League of the Seven, who have already backed out of the fight for this world. Within the room, Zhong Shou held the message talisman that Ruoshui sent over and was in deep thought. The number of powers that interfered in the fight for the Yuanren world was more than he had expected. Apart from these few, there were many outer region powers. However, they were at a disadvantage. Before the dust settled in the Yuanren world, they were crazily snatching the resources of the land they ruled. These forces were negligible. As Tan Jing had said, Celestial Realm experts wouldn't join in. If they were really fighting for a piece of land, they would call in their friends. Celestial Realm and God Realm experts would throw in endless amounts of strength and engage in intense battles. No matter how strong a power was, they wouldn't be able to take it. The so-called Tianfang Guild and Xianling Guild wouldn't be able to exist at all. Thus, unless there was a need, the powers would restrain themselves. This was also the tacit understanding between the powers of the outer region. After all, to them, the path of longevity was the foundation. Speaking of which, the 7 countries in the West have some weight. Celestial Realm experts could only sit on the side and watch. Victory and defeat would be decided by those below Spirit Realm. With that, the native strength of the Yuanren world was really important and could be used as support. That Jujing cultivator had indeed raised a tiger and wolf army. The 7-country army had a total of 4 million people. 1 million of them were elites and they were all decent. Based on what Serene said, their combat strength was on the same level as the average Deqian. Out of the few powers, their cloud world was the weakest. Naturally, they had to rely on the native strength of the Yuanren world. As expected, conquering the outer region isn't a simple matter. Speaking of which, it is time for me to come out of seclusion. Zhong Shou looked forward. During this month, his speed in the room increased by 10 times. At this moment, the number of stars he could manifest outside had reached 40. His comprehension of the Grand Tao was getting slower and slower. He was still far away from his goal of 72 star Tao seeds to enter the celestial realm. As for the 10 extreme Imperial Dao Destruction sword formation, after he familiarized himself with the sword training process, his progress was getting faster and faster. At this moment, he had doubled to a full 24. White in color, spiritual light shone as it hung around him. He didn't know how strong it was, but the newly crafted sword looked much better than the previous ones. The dragon aura was vast, and one could see the instant space long-ing appearing within it. Just at this moment, Zhong Shou suddenly sensed something and looked outside of the room, only to see a talisman land in the air and hang outside of the Yuanjing Palace, circling and not leaving. Zhong Shou took a look and then casually waved his hand, allowing the talisman to charge in and land in front of him. The talisman spread out and Tan Jing's body instantly appeared in front of him. It was a mirror image. He was tens of thousands of miles away and bowed towards him. A month has passed. Has ruler thought about it? The way he addressed him as monarch was a bit more respectful. It was obvious that during this month, this Tianfang guild deacon didn't do nothing and had already investigated his identity in the cloud world. Zhong Shou looked curiously at the person in front of him who was formed by the spiritual light. 10,000 miles projection? This method was interesting. The timing of this person's attack was also perfect. If it was too early, it would make one feel annoyed. If it was too late and they gained a footing, it wouldn't be appropriate. He expressionlessly looked at Tan Jing and said coldly, "I know the rules, but I still need 3 months. 3 months? Tan Jing frowned and said, "I'm fine with it. However, that Han Ling order and Judu Xianting might not be willing. Why not make it 1 month? Tan Jing can help us. It is hard to offend everyone. Ruler, please think about it. 1.5 months. Zhong Shou was really firm, asking for a high price and asking for a low price. That was how it was. 1.5 months from now, I won't interfere in this Yuanren world matter. Tan Jing hesitated slightly before nodding his head. Let's follow ruler's intentions and set it at 45 days. At that time, if ruler is still unwilling, there will be no less than 40 celestial realm experts descending. If it really reaches such a situation, the situation will be unsalvageable. Zhong Shou scoffed coldly and didn't speak, his eyes filled with mocking intent. Tan Jing decisively stopped and said seriously, "Speaking of which, there is something I need to tell ruler. Recently, a few people came to Tianfang World. I heard that they came from the Liu family. They are investigating about a murder case a few months ago. The time and location are exactly the same as when ruler entered and exited Tianfang World." Zhong Shou's eyes squinted. His expression didn't change, and he was really calm. "Murder case? It is probably me. Then, is Tianfang Guild prepared to sell me out?" "Ruler, you must be joking," Tan Jing said awkwardly. "No matter how much we want to suck up to the Liu family, we won't betray ruler. We can't afford to offend Saint Venerable Long Ying. It is best if we don't get involved. I am just telling you this news to remind ruler." Only then did Zhong Shou's expression turn warm. These people knew the pros and cons and knew how to console him. After the matter was settled, Zhong Shou smiled. "Is your Tianfang Guild interested in doing business with me?" The moment he said this, Tan Jing's brow rose up, his eyes filled with surprise. What kind of business did Zhong Shou have to discuss with them? If it was to form an alliance, then Tan Jing had to stay far away. Although Zhong Shou's background was strong, apart from Long Ying and Ao Kuan, the strength he could bring out was too little. He talked with Tan Jing until the spiritual energy of the 10,000-mile appearance talisman was used up. An hour later, Zhong Shou walked out of the room with a smile that wasn't a smile. He was really satisfied with the conversation this time. Hong Jiuchen, Mufang, Fuyue, Chaho, who these few names were the names of the few people that day. In half a day, Tan Jing didn't hold back at all, revealing the strength of these few people, the people under them, all the intel. At this moment, out of all the powers in the Yuanren world, the Judu Xianting that Hong Jiuchen was in was the strongest. They occupied the richest southwest land in the Yuanren world. At this moment, they were preparing their troops and horses, eyeing the land that Jiujing was originally under. The other few powers were the same, preparing to split up this southwest land. The situation was indeed really dangerous. Opening up the outer region wasn't a simple matter. Just as he walked out of the room, Zhong Shou saw Tai Chi standing in front of the door. When he saw Zhong Shou, he was startled and came back to his senses. "Ruler, the royal families of the various countries have arrived. Do you want to meet them?" Chapter 838. King Race of the Various Countries? Let's just leave them hanging for now. Zhong Shou had a thought and knew why this Tai Chi came to find him. His eyes swept behind him and saw that Zhao Yinran was there too. Her brows were filled with seriousness. He smiled. Brother Feng didn't come to find me just for this matter? He didn't know that he had come out of seclusion and still came to disturb him. It was obvious that the matter wasn't small. Although that is the case, it is best if the 7 kings are decided as soon as possible. We need to stabilize the situation and prevent people from panicking. Based on what I know, there are many people within the 7 countries who are having second thoughts. They were only afraid of Jiujing and died at our hand. They can't see through our situation and are just worried. As he said that, Tai Chi said seriously, "Moreover, if we don't decide, no one will pay the taxes of the 7 countries." Zhong Shou looked at Zhao Yinran, only to see that she had a similar expression. Her brow furrowed, her eyes filled with unhappiness. Out of all the people in charge of the 3 factions, her performance was the most unsatisfactory. Maybe because she had never been in charge before, it was still okay on the boat. However, the moment she arrived in the Yuanren world, she was at a loss, causing the Tsang Xingdao disciples to grumble. She had lost all her face. It was understandable that her expression wasn't good. This crazy woman, this time she finally understood the pain of Zhong Shou ruling a country, right? This was good, at least she wouldn't mock him all day long. Tai Chi's first sentence made sense, however. The main point was at the end. The 2 of them were unhappy about the chaos below. The situation was chaotic. Not only would it affect their footing in the Yuanren world, but it would also reduce their gains. I already know about this matter, I will deal with it later. Zhong Shou nodded slightly. It was indeed time to solve this matter. As for where to start, he more or less had some ideas. That's for the best. We'll just watch how Monarch arranges things. After Tai Chi said this, his tone changed and he hesitated slightly. I heard that when Jiujing arranges the throne, he doesn't pick talents and only chooses people who are willing to listen to him. When I think about it, this method makes a lot of sense. Or they could simply choose from the soldiers under the monarch's command. This is just my opinion, please reconsider. This time, Zhong Shou smiled but did not say anything. Generally speaking, this method was the safest. However, he had his own plans for this. Zhong Shou chose the main hall of the Yuanjing Palace to receive the 7 monarchs. Without a doubt, this was the grandest place in Yuanjing Palace. 4,000 feet from north to south were all made of red sandalwood and agarwood. The fragrance wafted for 1,000 miles, and it was magnificent. Compared to Zhong Shou's Chongqing Palace, it was much better. One person sitting at the top of the hall and looking down, only to feel that a 10,000-strong army could be easily accommodated. At this moment, the 7 monarchs, along with the emperor race, all trembled as they bowed under his throne. Actually, it was not only the emperor race who came to greet him. There were also ministers and generals of the 7 countries who had a little bit of power here. It was bustling with activity and there were at least 1,000 people. Their expressions were either respectful, curious, mocking, or calm. However, they all bowed down and were extremely respectful. Zhong Shou casually glanced around. When he saw the dozens of people at the front, he instantly frowned. Zhong Shou was a hero. Even when he was bullied in Linhai College, he never bowed to anyone. Even if he died, his back would be straightened. Therefore, the people he couldn't stand the most were people who were like mud. However, thinking back to what Zhu Jing did before, he only listened to people obediently. He only chose to listen to him. Those true talents were just used, but he didn't give them important positions. Looking at the people in the hall, they all looked like they didn't care, or maybe they had expected this. Some were cold and distant, some were fawning, some had cold gazes, trying their best to hide the hatred in their eyes. Zhong Shou smiled and retracted his gaze. Where is the great Xian country ruler? The moment he said this, a long while later, a middle-aged man stood up with an ashen-white face and bowed in front of Zhong Shou. Little King Do-yi greets celestial ruler. Zhong Shou didn't even look at him. You were conferred by Zhu Jing. It is said that in the past 20 years, you have been conferred the title of Zhu Jing. You followed his orders to bully the people and pillage, causing numerous people to starve and eat each other? Do-yi smiled bitterly. Zhu Jing instructed him to do all of this, so did he dare to not follow? If he did, he would probably lose his life. Before he was able to explain, Zhong Shou waved his sleeves. Today, the celestial dynasty has changed. Zhu Jing is already dead, so you should wipe out the country. After you take over with the new king, you can bring your entire family and leave Yuanren world. Remember that when you leave, you must help the new ruler to stabilize the country. If not, I might go back on my words. The moment he said these words, Do-yi was first shocked and then delighted. He actually didn't die with Zhu Jing and was able to leave safely. This outcome made him delighted. As for the following instructions, it was expected. He knew that this was the price of living. At this moment, even the deathly look in the eyes of the other few country rulers retreated. A look of anticipation appeared in their eyes. Zhong Shou then asked, Great Xian Kunnan Province Governor He Daoren, who is he? There were 7 countries in the southwest of the Yuanren world. Each country was half a state of land and had 5 provinces under them. The Kunnan province governor was the smallest in the country and also the weakest. However, due to it being at the border, they had strong troops. That Kunnan province governor He Daoren was a muscular young man around 30. When he heard this, he obviously didn't expect that Zhong Shou would call out to him. He couldn't help but feel shocked. Then, his expression turned solemn as he stood out. Xian country small minister, He Daoren greets celestial ruler. Zhong Shou smiled and sized up this person. A weird expression flashed across his eyes. Under the pressure of his soul, he was able to be neither arrogant nor servile. He was a decent person. No wonder the few hidden guards under Ruoshui respected this person so much. I heard that in the few years you have been in office, you have resisted taxes 3 times. Is that true? He Daoren kept silent and didn't reply. That matter did happen, but he had no choice. Kunnan province was just too poor and had no way to support it. Actually, in his heart, he didn't want to do that and put himself in danger. Anyways, he had a clear conscience. If this celestial ruler wanted to use his head to show off his might, then he had nothing to say. You have quite a lot of political skills as well. At least in these 3 years, the number of people who starved to death in Kunnan province was the least out of the 8 provinces of Xian country. As he said that, Zhong Shou's expression and tone suddenly became solemn. Your character and personality are all top quality. From today on, you can become the ruler of Xian country. Let me ask you, are you willing to work for my Qian's celestial dynasty? The moment he said those words, not only was He Daoren startled. The people in the palace were all shocked. Those who were secretly rejoicing in others' misfortune almost bit their tongues. In their eyes, this was the person who had the least chance of succeeding the throne. Tai Chi and Zhao Yanran both stood up, their brows tightly furrowed. The 2 of them had heard of this Kunnan province governor before. It was said that he had his own opinions. Once he succeeded, he might not listen to the Deqian and Zhongsho. Daoran was stunned for a moment and then his brows furrowed. In the end, he sighed and bowed. How would I dare not work for you? Thank you, celestial ruler, for your kindness. Zhongsho smiled and knew what Daoran was worried about. He was afraid that this person valued reputation more than power. He was also worried about how to satisfy the demands of the celestial dynasty in the future. For now, he didn't bother and continued to deal with the other 6 country rulers. Like a sharp knife cutting through a tangled knot, he quickly decided on the candidate. If it was before, Feng Taiji thought that this person was just a special case. In the end, every monarch who succeeded to the throne was a capable person within the country. Although they weren't as outstanding as Daoran, they were all extraordinary. They were either famous for their governance ability and were known for being righteous, or they were in charge of the military and had great achievement. This caused the close to 1,000 people in the hall to be totally silent. In the end, Zhongsho didn't stop and said leisurely, "My Deqian celestial dynasty is different from Jiujing and we don't like to force people. If you 7 countries are willing to be protected by me, you can pay 20% of your taxes to the celestial dynasty. If you aren't willing, you don't have to pay. Naturally, if something happens in the future, I won't protect you. Treat it as you being removed from the Deqian vassals." As Tai Chi listened on, his hands started to crack. This Zhongsho was really generous. Even if he didn't take 50% of taxes like Jiujing, there was no reason for him to lower it to 20%. He actually wanted these people to be willing? Was this blood sword monster lord crazy? The hall was in an uproar as everyone exchanged glances with one another. Some were filled with disbelief and some were surprised. A bright glow flashed in Daoran's eyes. Zhongsho's words continued, "If you mortals find any treasures, I will bring them to you. You can bring it to my Yuanjing palace. I will send someone to trade it for something of equal value. Mind stones, mind artifacts, martial arts and spiritual technique. I will announce this matter to the world." At the start, Tai Chi was furious, but now he had already calmed down. What was this Zhongsho trying to do? What was he trying to do by making such a promise? Zhongsho smiled, suddenly looking towards a person in the hall with deep meaning. It was a 40-year-old middle-aged man who was handsome and had a beautiful beard. At this moment, he was trying his best to hide in the crowd so that he didn't look weird. However, just now, that moment of fluctuation in his heart revealed his foundations. This is the person that Ruoshui was talking about? He is really interesting. Zhongsho broke into a laugh. Did this person really think that? Did he really think that he could hide in front of him? He wasn't Jiujing. If Taoist he could be described as a hero, then this person was a true hero. Apart from that, there is one more thing. I will choose strong people from the 7 countries to enter the Celestial Dynasty army. If you feel that you have the talent to cultivate, you can come to Yuanjing Palace. This time, there are 3 sects that have followed me over. Songsheng Dao, Kenzo sect, Buddhist faction. They all have long life methods, be it martial path or spiritual technique, they are all at the peak. People from Yuanren world can enter their sect. Tai Chi's face twisted. He couldn't help but smash the bronze cup in his hand into pieces. To be continued. Chapter 839. When the nobles who had come to see him all left, Zhongsho's expression changed. The atmosphere within the hall instantly became really solemn. Tai Chi and Zhao Yanran's faces were green as they looked at Zhongsho in confusion. Before this, they gave this fellow face and didn't want the Yuanren world people to see the differences between them. This was why they didn't open their mouths to interrupt and question Zhongsho's words. At this moment, the outsiders weren't here anymore, so naturally it was time to settle the score. Ruler is so generous, reducing the tax by a full 30% just like that. Even after the battle in the underground lake a few years ago, Feng Taiji's personality had become much calmer. At this moment, his tone was filled with a mocking intent. As for the matter of the countries being willing, he was too lazy to talk about it. Also, the country rulers that ruler chose are all outstanding people in the Yuanren world who are ambitious. Once such people take power, they won't be willing to be controlled by others. His tone was filled with worry. Surrounded by wolves, Zhong Shou felt like it wasn't troublesome enough. Zhong Shou laughed heartlessly. Brother Feng, what is the use of the tax to us? Can we use it in the current situation? Tai Chi's brows rose up. Jiujing collected taxes to raise an army. Without a huge army, it would be tough to defend against the attacks of the surrounding countries. Then, he had an idea. To them, these taxes didn't have much use. They only had 300,000 soldiers. Even if they were recruited from the Yuanren world, they were squeezed dry for hundreds of years and the people had no way to make a living. It was hard for them to remain loyal. For example, recluse Jiujing recruited soldiers from his original small world. Now, most of them were taken away by those spirit realm cultivators who fled. Looking at these 7 countries, they do need to rest up and let them take a breather. Moreover, the people of the 7 countries are terrified. If they weren't such talents, how would they be able to stabilize the situation within a month? It was good to be mediocre and only know how to be a yes man. However, today we are in a situation where danger is everywhere. Knowing that Tai Chi was an extremely intelligent person, Zhong Shou only spoke to the point and did not say much. Tai Chi was deep in thought, his eyes flashing with understanding. That was indeed the case. The people that Zhong Shou had chosen all had one thing in common other than their talents: they were powerful and had enough resources and connections. It was indeed possible to control the overall situation in the shortest amount of time, unite the hearts of the people, and resist external aggression. Then, this 20% tax had a deeper meaning. This test is not bad, but it can only deal with the current situation. There will still be some hidden dangers in the future. How are we going to control these 7 nations in the future? Why do we need to control them? It will suffice as long as we have those people serve us willingly. Zhong Shou could not help but laugh. It's not up to them. Tai Chi thought that as expected, the 20% tax had restored the hearts of the people of the 7 nations. It also meant that the new rulers of the 7 countries had to go all out. Now that they had become rulers of a country, although their identities were noble, they had lost the ability to turn things around. If Deqian backed out of the Yuanren world, then their subjects might be able to live. As for the 7 rulers led by He Daoren, they had no chance of living. Even if it was for their own lives, they had to work with Deqian. As for the future, if the Yuanren world fell into their hands, they didn't need to care about these 7 people. He thought to himself that this was probably the difference between him and Zhong Shou. Although this fellow said that he wasn't good at scheming, he was magnanimous. He was also good at controlling the situation, causing people to serve him no matter if they were willing or not. As compared to this person, he was indeed a little narrow-minded. No wonder this person was able to build up such a foundation in just a few years. Shaking his head slightly, the weight in Tai Chi's heart dissipated a little. However, there was still one more thing that he needed to think about. Forget about all that. Tai Chi really doesn't know why our Kenzo sect wants to open a mountain to accept disciples in the Yuanren world? Zhao Yinran scoffed coldly. Also, since when is it the ruler's turn to make decisions for our common people path? Actually, with Zhong Shou's identity, naturally, he could make the decision. However, to accept people from the Yuanren world as disciples, he felt that it was inconceivable. Zhong Shou blinked his eyes in confusion. Instead, he looked at the 2 of them in shock. Didn't the 2 of you know that Zifang has already chosen a location in the Yuanren world and is prepared to open 10 temples at once? Tai Chi's brow rose up. He had heard about this matter, But what did it have to do with them accepting disciples? Zhong Shou smiled and asked, "Then let me ask you, why did you all come? Conquering other worlds, is it to plunder resources or to strengthen the foundations of the sect? After taking down this world, how are we going to defend it? Is the Kenzo sect not prepared to expand outside of the Yuanren world? The population of the Cloud world was really limited. If they were like the Lu family occupying 800 worlds, they would definitely need numerous cultivators and huge armies. Just the strength of the Cloud world alone wouldn't be able to provide that." Feng Taiji was startled. Clearly, he realized what was going on. They didn't think about continuing to expand to the outer regions. However, if they could have such gains like the Yuanren world, it would be great. The strength of the 7 sects of the Kenzo sect could take care of one Yuanren world. However, if they had some foundations in this world, it would reduce the pressure on the sect. They could also choose the best disciples in this world, speaking of which, the Buddhist faction was the same. Thinking about that, he still frowned. The people of the Yuanren world have different physiques from our Cloud world people. Pretty much the same. Zhong Shou shook his head. He had always suspected that the people of the Cloud world might have moved in from the outer regions. Why were they so similar? Like the Lu family, they were pretty much no different from the people of the Cloud world. With Brother Feng's ability, you shouldn't be troubled by this cultivation method matter, right? Tai Chi's teeth felt sour when he heard that. His face alternated between green and white. In the end, he gritted his teeth. "I need to ask the elders of the vast habitat before I make a decision." If the Cloud world side really agreed, then this cultivation method would be a headache for the Saint Realm and God Realm experts in the sect. In his heart, he felt that something wasn't right. Following Zhong Shou over was just a small test by the Kenzo sect. They were just trying to see if they could plunder some resources from the outer regions to strengthen the sect. Why did things change at this moment? Zhong Shou smiled. Above Spirit Realm in the Kenzo sect, most of them had traveled the outer regions and had seen much more than Tai Chi then. He looked towards Zhao Yanran. In the Yuanren world, there is no Taoist faction or Confucian faction. There aren't many places where Tsang Xingdao can spread his teachings. Isn't the environment here suitable for your sect to spread your teachings? If you can take over Yuanren, I can let Tsang Xingdao control one state. Zhao Yanran's face was conflicted. She wasn't interested in Tsang Xingdao's teachings. However, she knew that if those people in the Tsang Xingdao sect found out, they would be delighted and extremely excited. Even those elders would be delighted. They would most probably be delighted and like Zhong Shou more and more. Thinking about it for a moment, she couldn't find a reason to retort. In the end, Zhao Yanran shook her head with a weird expression. Reducing taxes, taking in disciples, and exchanging spiritual items. Why do I feel like we aren't here to plunder Yuanren world, but to do good things? To think that she had already made preparations a month ago. If there was a need, she would start a massacre in the Yuanren world. She, Zhao Yanran, didn't lack sure methods. What nonsense are you talking about? My Deqian has always loved the people like my children and built our country on filial piety. Since the Yuanren 7 countries are vassals, then I will treat the people of those countries as my people. Why would I plunder them? Zhong Shou's face was solemn when he heard that. His tone was firm like he was furious at Zhao Yanran's words. His face was filled with righteousness. Yanran, you need to remember that my Deqian can't bear for the people of the Yuanren world to suffer, which is why I came from so far away. To save the people of the Yuanren world from the sea of bitterness. What is it called? That's right, liberation. Even if we collect 20% of the tax and take some mind stones, it is necessary to chase away evil demons. Tai Chi couldn't help but laugh. So ruler is prepared to open a market under the Yuanjing Palace. This was the first time he felt something. This Deqian ruler was really interesting. He came to plunder, but he made it sound like he was doing it for the greater good. He roughly understood Zhong Shou's intentions. Since he wanted to be righteous, he could only do things like that. At this moment, he didn't have any thoughts of objecting. In the past, Jiujing's way of doing things was to let the 7 countries pay tribute. Zhong Shou's way of doing things was undoubtedly much smarter. Using items to exchange, they said that it was an exchange of items of equal value. However, as for how to set the price, it was still up to them. Moreover, things that were rare in other places were really normal in the Yuanren world. Things that the Yuanren world didn't have were also many in the Cloud world. Exchanging what one didn't have, just by earning the difference, one would be able to earn a lot. He roughly comprehended that although Zhong Shou's method was a little gentle, it wasn't like Jiujing to totally control the Yuanren world. However, it was much more subtle. In the end, what they obtained might not be any worse than Jiujing. He slowly calmed down. Doing things like that seemed like a good idea. That's right. Zhong Shou nodded his head in delight. His expression was one of praise for being able to be taught. To be able to use gentle methods to plunder resources, why did they have to be stained with blood and fight to the death? He smiled. I am doing things like that because I am thinking about your 3 factions. Since you are participating, I naturally have to take care of you. If I don't gain the hearts of the Yuanren people, how will I be able to spread the teachings? In his words, there was a hint of, you should remember to appreciate his kindness. Zhao Yinran was speechless. That was right. Just at this moment, outside of the hall, Zifang stepped in and bowed solemnly. Ruler is merciful, our Buddhist faction is really grateful. He looked at Zhong Shou with a complicated expression. Before this, he was still worried. At this moment, he was sure that the Buddhist faction would be able to prosper in the Yuanren world. To meet such a ruler was the fortune of the Buddhist faction. At the same time, within the Cloud world, Kong Rui walked out of the room in shock and looked above. That was the giant silver dragon that was flying in the air, its head held high, its roar spreading all about. Beside the giant dragon was the phoenix shadow, dragon energy blazing? That doesn't seem right. Kong Rui picked up the Wen King divination money and looked closely. His expression became weirder and weirder. What exactly did Jun Shang do in the outer region? Causing dragons and phoenixes to roar? Chapter 840. After convincing Tai Chi and the others, there was still the abdication ceremony. This was an official ceremony to make the old rulers of the 7 countries abdicate, and then the Deqian people confer titles. Everything was handled by Zifang, who was a Buddhist, and he actually did it well. After this step, the Yuanren 7 countries were truly under the Deqian. Just a few days later, countless people had gathered at the foot of Yuanjing Palace. Some people brought various treasures over to exchange for some money. Most of them came to join the 3 factions that Zhong Shou mentioned. The current Yuanren world was like the Cloud world 20,000 years ago. Be it martial path or spiritual cultivation, they were all really shallow. Even if they wanted to cultivate, there was nowhere to learn. This time Zhong Shou opened a door for them without any signs. No matter if it was real or fake, they had to try. The bustling below the Yuanjing Palace made the elders of the Kongqi and Danquan sects delighted. The 2 sects specialized in artifact crafting and pill refining, and exchanging spiritual items was cheap. This time there were many blacksmiths and pill refiners who followed. In a short few days they earned a crazy amount. Naturally, there were also people who came for the wealth of the mortal world. What cultivators didn't care about the most were precisely these things. As for accepting disciples, the Kenzo sect Tsang Xingdao and the few other people in charge were a little against it at the start. But once, by chance, a cultivator of the Wujua villa actually chose an extremely talented young man from a group of refugees that rushed over from nearby, and made him enter the sect. The entire Yuanjing Palace was instantly in an uproar. the difference between the people of the Yuanren world and the cloud world was really small. Even if there was a difference, it was just some meridians and positions which could be easily changed. As for many other areas like comprehension, bones, heart, etc., they were all the same. The soul was the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls, there was no difference. In other words, the people of this world might have a chance to reach the saint realm. Even if his future achievements were limited, he would still be a great addition to Tsang Xing Dao and the Kenzo sect, which were lacking in manpower. In just a few days, his reluctance had turned into enthusiasm, and he was willing to give it his all. They even quarreled in front of Zhong Shou over the disciple quota. After more than 10 days, he had indeed obtained dozens of extremely talented disciples. Unfortunately, most of the people who were sent to Yuanjing Palace at this time were the children of nobles, and they were all side branches that were not valued. The leaders of the 7 nations wanted to curry favor with the Yuanjing Palace and wanted to give it a try. But they were also afraid of taking the risk, so they only sent the concubine-born children. This action made Tai Chi and the other spirit realm elders of Tsang Xingdao very unhappy. Thus, they decided to be like the Buddhist sects and set up branches in various spiritual lands within the 7 nations to make it easier for them to search. However, at this time, they hadn't gained a stable footing, which was why they temporarily gave up. A month later would be the true test. However, if it was before, the 3 factions only had the thought that they didn't care about this Yuanren world and that it was enough to just scour it. However, at this moment, they were truly prepared to fight to the death. They say that heroes are born in times of chaos, heroes are born in times of danger. The Yuanren world is in deep trouble, and I can look on from the sidelines. In your Yuanren world, there are too many talented people who can succeed in the cultivation path. They aren't inferior to our cloud world 100 years ago. Above the Yuanjing Palace, Zhong Shou leaned on the railing and stood there. He looked excitedly at the huge market below that was starting to take shape. In the past, there were only some houses and inns that were convenient for people who came to worship Jujing to stay. At this moment, there were many houses, 100,000 feet from north to south. There were hundreds of thousands of people gathered here. At this moment, the person who was listening to him speak was a 30-year-old male. It was the person who Zhong Shou paid attention to that day in the main hall of the Yuanjing Palace. At this moment, he was really calm as he stood behind Zhong Shou. His actions weren't arrogant or servile, and he was also polite. When he heard this, he shook his head slightly. I don't know whether or not our Yuanren world has many talents. However, I know that this time if Celestial Ruler didn't show mercy, these people would be mediocre for the rest of their lives. At most, in 70 to 80 years they would turn into a cup of dust. Celestial Ruler's kindness is akin to giving them a new lease on life. Our Yuanren world people will be eternally grateful. His tone was filled with heartfelt respect. Is that so? Does this include you, Zhuangyu? Zhong Shou laughed and then he heard a moment of silence behind him. He didn't care and continued to ask. I heard that during these 10 years, the eastern front of the Yuanren front was on the eastern front. The entire eastern front of Great Lin is maintained by you, Zhuangyu, alone? Jujing relied on you a lot? He is one of the few famous generals in the Yuanren world. Great Lin was beside Xian country. Its land area was slightly bigger, having 8 provinces of land. However, due to a large portion of its borders being in the east, it had many wars. It was the weakest out of the 7 countries. However, this situation changed 10 years ago. Chapter 841. That Jujing has been tyrannical in my Yuanren world, taking what he wants. Many of my loved ones have died because of this. Even if I want to rebel, it is normal." His voice was sonorous and carried an incomparably dense resentment, as well as extreme helplessness. "Normal? This reason is not bad, I just hope that you are sincere." Zhong Shou nodded slightly and then a bright glow flashed in his eyes. "Then what if I kill Jujing? Hong Jiuchen, Tan Jing, and the others work together to kill me? Then, the Yuanren world will continue to fall. With your intelligence, you should have made preparations, right?" Zhuang Yu's pupils constricted and his face turned ashen white. He suddenly understood that all the words that Zhong Shou said before were just for this sentence. His mouth couldn't help but feel dry. He wanted to retort, but he didn't know what to say. He only felt that the person in front of him had seen through him and he had no secrets at all. He also knew that even if he tried to retort, this person wouldn't care. The strength that this person grasped was far stronger than his. As for him, he had no way to fight back. Life and death were in his hands. Just this point alone made all his schemes and all the strength that he had accumulated for so many years become useless. In fact, just one suspicion was enough. Why would a person with power need to reason with others? "If you don't speak, then I will take it as you admitting it." Zhong Shou turned around and continued to look at the market below with interest. This famous general of the Yuanren world was already in his hands and couldn't escape. "I am really worried about people like you and don't dare to be the ruler of a region. You have no chance to be the ruler of a country, but I can let you be the front army commander of the Deqian celestial dynasty. Control the armies of the 4 countries and be in charge of the war in the east. You should be able to find out a little about the current situation. My Deqian isn't stable yet and I am at a loss as to how to deal with it. I can only rely on you. A month later, if you can defeat the eastern countries, everything will be fine, and I will repay you. If you don't win, then I will chop off your head before I leave." The position of commander-in-chief of the 5 armies was only below the inspector of the 5 armies. However, it was this Deqian immortal dynasty that was like an empty shell, and not the Qian nation of the cloud world. It was to temporarily deal with the current situation. As for what would happen after that, whether or not he would get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness would depend on this fellow's performance. Zhuang Yu was startled once more. A moment later, he bowed with a complicated expression. "Thank you, Celestial Lord, for thinking highly of me." The immortal monarch was indeed magnanimous. One month later, regardless of whether it is a great victory or a difficult situation, Zhuang Yu will do his best to force the enemy back. However, he didn't feel anything at all. It was because he was very clear that this was just an exchange. From the beginning to the end, it was filled with coercion and threats. There was no room for him to refute, nor was there any room for discussion. He didn't even bother to hide his suspicions and wariness. As a result, the tone of his second sentence was extremely strange. It was unknown whether it was praise or sarcasm. "Magnanimous?" Zhong Shou laughed and touched his chin. He looked young too early, and his chin was still really smooth. He didn't have a beard, which he had always regretted. However, who knows, he might really be magnanimous. Actually, he only had some guesses about Zhuang Yu's hidden plans these few years. As for whether or not this person would succeed in the future, he didn't know. However, 10 years later, the God Emperor led the army to conquer everywhere. However, he faced setbacks in this Yuanren world and was blocked for a full 7 years. Due to the battle in the Yuanren world, which involved large amounts of troops, he wasn't able to quickly unify the cloud world. In front of the Kong Yao army, they lost many battles. At their worst, they were nearly chased out of the cloud world. If not for the power struggle within the Taishang, the Liao king who inherited the throne was too suspicious of Kong Yao. Whether or not the Taishang would fall in the end was another matter. However, Zhong Shou had always been curious about the person who blocked the God Emperor for 7 years in the Yuanren world. Unfortunately, in the history books, there weren't any records of this person. He was drowned in the river of time, and there were no traces of him at all. He didn't know whether or not this person was him, but looking at it now, he was the most likely one. Who knows whether or not his will existed in this world? Looking at the various worlds, each time a world was in danger, numerous heroes would be born, rising and falling. The Yuanren world was like that, so was the Cloud world. Zhong Shou's mind was filled with random thoughts, but in the end, he retracted his thoughts. Are you referring to how I can tolerate a traitor like you in a chaotic world? The muscles on Zhuang Yu's face twitched, but he still lowered his body and said, a traitor in a chaotic world can be a good minister in a peaceful world. Are you reminding me that I can't give you any chances in the future? Zhong Shou smiled. I will remember. I will also hope that you will be more careful when you do such things in the future. I am not Jiujing. Zhuang Yu smiled bitterly. How would I dare to lie in front of celestial ruler? You don't dare? Does that include your cultivation at the peak of the spirit realm? Zhong Shou's lips curled up in delight. Although he didn't use his eyes, he could clearly sense it. Zhuang Yu's body trembled slightly. It was obvious that he was shocked. Are you waiting a few years to break through to celestial realm before you act? That Jiujing probably didn't expect that a few years later, the general he has high hopes for would personally take his life. While he said this, he shook his head. Feyan always said that he liked to pretend to be a pig to eat the tiger. How wrong was that? In terms of pretending to be a pig, this fellow was the one. He asked curiously, looking at your cultivation technique, it is not bad. Did you create it yourself or did you learn it from others? That's right, since it is the aura concealment technique. To be able to hide from Jiujing, you must have come from the outer region. Who are you relying on? Zhuang Yu's face was ashen. He gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. A few days ago, he had a feeling that although Zhong Shou wasn't as crazy and unrestrained as Jiujing, he was much stronger than Jiujing. He was much more problematic than Jiujing and was hard to deal with. Waiving 30% tax seemed like a merciful action. However, the rulers of the various countries risked their own safety to protect their country. They still needed to use their military to collect taxes from the people. However, the grievances of the people didn't belong to the Deqian celestial dynasty anymore. He wantonly recruited disciples in the Yuanren world, causing the elites of this world to be tied together with these people from the Cloud world. During these days, he even set up porridge stalls outside the market to help refugees. The people were ignorant and in a few months, they would treat these people as their saviors. They would think that they were different from Jiujing and were celestials who saved them from their pain. How would they know how vicious and cunning this Deqian celestial dynasty ruler was? If it was a few days ago, he still had some hope. However, at this moment, he couldn't see any hope at all. He even had an urge that even if he died, he would drag this person down with him. Do you want to go all out and die together with me? Zhong Shou shook his head slightly. Think about it carefully. Even if you do it, I will just back out of the Yuanren world. However, the people of this world will still have a tough life. However, if you are in my hands, naturally your lives will be better. My people, no matter which world they are from, will be treated equally. Zhuang Yu was startled and raised his head to look at Zhong Shou. The hatred in his eyes retreated slightly as he solemnly cupped his fists. I will go all out. I only hope that in the future, ruler can keep your promise. Zhong Shou didn't say anything to him, casually tossing over a talisman decree along with a golden seal. Take care of yourself. After saying this, he stepped into the air and stepped into the 70,000 feet cloud layer. Although he barely managed to convince Zhuang Yu, he felt helpless in his heart. If he didn't want to hear what Zhong's show would say and what conditions he would promise, why would he come here? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.